started a game.
It's gonna be a hot one
in the new
today.
D&D.
Just super duper hot with Ken and Bill and the Geeky Gamer Podcast. We're doing all the things. We got a guest today. It's Patreon time. Yeah, that's right. You get to know about it. Whether you choose to do anything about it, that's on you. And certainly, if you don't have the money, don't do it.
This course of action has been widely successful for us.
We do have one. All lowercase letters, Mr. Remstrup does the music, Couchfire Media. They do all the other stuff. Trois Productions took off
Hallowed be their
2
name.
years ago. This is the Geeky Gamer Podcast.
Yeah.
And we're featuring Andrew
Borchert-Isaacs.
Yeah.
Isaacs.
AKA Drew. Yeah, man.
Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Drew, who are you?
I am a 30-year-old in the out here in wonderful sunny California, working on being a director, an actor, first AD, just generally working with film, television, and yeah, I love to tell stories. I play video games all the time. I play board games all the time. I love music. I don't know. I could go on, but.
Well, you will. We're going to be here for an hour.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And how do you know Ken?
Yeah, I know Ken. We go way back. So back way back in the day, you know, I was a zygote and there was an egg, and we were
Damn it.
we were swimming, you know, near but not in the same canals, but you know, same club
Similar
generally. Yeah.
Similar canals.
Yeah. It was a subscription service that we both had, you know, at the time, and
Software as a service.
Exactly. So
disgusting. That's disgusting.
There we
How
go.
you guys started this, so that's what it was. And how do we know each other?
We started doing an acting class together, and
Very different scenario.
Yes, extremely different. Both still starting as babies, but in a different metaphorical sense instead of literal.
Yeah.
Yes, figurative. We focused solely on our figures. And mostly sitting in the back corner, just messing around, talking shit about the people on the acting floor, and then
you abandoned me, and then now it's me in the corner.
True enough, you alone at the Denny's, sitting there getting your coffee at midnight, and
yeah, I was doing that last time.
Does Denny's still exist? I thought they went bankrupt.
Dude, Denny's is out here in force.
The only reason that they exist is Will has been their patron for the last 10 years. So
yeah, speaking of patrons, you know what patrons do? They keep us in business. So we have a Patreon. If you'd like to join us, help. Yeah, no, dude, we go into Denny's hard in the paint. Denny's, actually, for real. Last night I was eating at Denny's, and I drank a pot of coffee. I had the steak and eggs. It was delicious. And I sat there and a whole deal of pancakes. And I was like, you know what? I should probably be more healthy. I think I need to change it up to the lumberjack breakfast. I'm pretty sure that that's the change that I need to make. You know, skip the pancakes. Eat just a little bit better for you.
A little protein in your life, yeah. That's. I mean, you're so damn thin, waif-like even. You definitely need to build a little more.
It's because all I eat is peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Because Ken and I are podcasting all the time. That's all we do. Ken's pretty much in a purgatory of setting up and tearing down his equipment, and I'm just riffing for hours on it.
Ken and his Sisyphusian task.
Actually, it's pretty close. So, right, Ken. is a director and filmmaker and all these things. He was out in. I'll let you tell. Tell Drew. Why am I telling him who you are?
Oh, you guys can't hear me. I'm muted.
No.
I was muted. I was talking the whole time. I was ripping and like adding all kinds of things, and then
gold. You're
like,
giving us gold.
Nobody listening to me. It's just kind of normal. I'm a filmmaker. I got a film coming up. I decided to cast Bill in it, producing. Yeah. For some reason, I didn't write it. I'm not directing it. I used to be a director back in the day.
What are you talking about? You were a director a year ago, year and a half ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you don't do something every year, I mean, I've directed a couple of commercials, but I don't think they count. I mean, they count like money-wise, but they don't count like
creatively.
This is actually like on point because Drew is a working. I mean, you're a working actor, but you're working in the industry, which is something I really don't know about. I know about acting and getting like little tiny jobs here and there, but not working in the industry. So I think you guys could have a pretty interesting conversation about this.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. What is it? Tell us what is this industry thing?
Yeah.
Right now, after writer strikes and in the midst of
definitely an interesting time because there is over the last year there's been a series of different strikes that have been happening. Writers strikes, various crew strikes. The production assistants are unionizing. The video game voice actors are currently on strike. There's all sorts of things happening.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's a lot of money too.
The PAs are unionizing. I didn't. I mean, I'm glad they are because people are like, "Oh, you're a PA."
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's they've done it kind of interestingly for the production assistants, where I think because within the commercial world they included production managers and kind of lower level producers in the production or in the PA union. So they specifically unionized commercials, but they haven't unionized television or movies yet. For a production assistant, it really makes very little difference between working a job on TV or movies or in documentaries, even reality, versus like commercials, except like the budget. Commercials usually have a lot of money to throw at whatever they need. TV, they are thinking about long term, so they usually try and be a little bit more sparse. And then movies, it just depends on what name brand gets placed onto those, either through producers, actors, directors, etc. But yeah, so there's been a lot happening over the last year. Yeah. And
PA unions, that's mind-boggling to me. Like I don't know anything about that. Of course, I should have been in the Animators Guild, but it didn't exist when I was doing animation, so that wasn't a thing. Now it's a thing, and Disney's still profiting off of that stuff that we worked on. Tell me, can you talk a little bit more about how PAs are unionizing and where that came from?
Yeah, it's still very, very new for a lot of it. The local 111 is the commercial PA union. We've been officially recognized by IATSE, which is good, but they're still at the negotiation table. We're still having lots of town hall meetings about what that looks like in sort of a more practical sense. Like I said, because we were including some folks within more production side, not just production assistants, there is some structure stuff that I don't know how exactly it's going to actually play out. On a commercial, the production manager is kind of the one who directs the production assistants, unlike all of the other parts of the industry where a first AD, a second AD is the one who's going to really, set the tone for everything and hire people and, all that kind of stuff. So there's still a lot of nebulous stuff in what's actually happening. What I know I would like to see to happen is that, especially for a union that includes some of the newest people into the industry, all the way up to folks who want to become, assistant directors in some way, shape, or form, I would really like to see some sort of seniority structure put into place. I know all of us want to see raise in our wages, because currently the lowest that I've seen here in LA is about $225 for a guaranteed 12, and the highest I've seen is about like $300 for a guaranteed 12.
So it has they've gotten. I mean, I think when I was there, it was 150, and so there has been some increasement, and 150 was going broke. Yeah,
and it really is like it feels like you were skirting the line of being able to live a normal life, but you really can't stop working more than a week or two before you start having to worry about, again, getting groceries and paying rent. And
I didn't hear anything that you said.
Sick.
Sorry.
No. Just to reiterate, it's
my I guess I didn't charge my That's fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine.
What he's saying?
What is? Hold on.
What he's saying is tech. Can you hear? Oh, you can hear. I see. Yeah, man. Well, see, that's the problem. I know. I'm gonna segue really quick. That's the problem with non-wired connections, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I don't Bluetooth it.
No.
I'm anti-Bluetooth. I'm done with it.
Can't be sending that signal right to your brain. It's got to go by your ear.
That's right. That's right, man. 2.4 gigahertz. So this is a boring conversation. I'm going to go with it though. These are Bluetooth, and when I first started using them, because I found them, I had it turned on and plugged in, and I thought I was using the cord, but actually I was using the Bluetooth, and it would die, and I'd get extremely frustrated, not knowing why. Until Ken told me, "Hey, dude, it's probably the Bluetooth is on us."
That's hilarious, and I love that you were actively trying to fry your brain while looking, presenting virtue signaling that you were actually a wired.
Oh, dude, this is cool. This is cool. Also, there's a delay on Bluetooth. Like, at least there's a noticeable delay on these.
It's like 3
that I can
milliseconds.
do what?
3 milliseconds.
Yeah, and those 3 milliseconds really matter. So I popped into LA nearly 2 years ago, which is a vastly different situation.
World atmosphere.
Yeah, the world as you guys are, I think, experienced with. Right?
Yeah. So, and the industry has changed a significant amount over the last 5 to 10 years. I moved out here in 2017. And the world that I was trying to break into then is massively different than post-COVID. And post-COVID, even the couple years, because there was like a little spike right after COVID as everybody was excited to get going on things, and then the strikes over the last year and a half, 2 years has been
good times.
Really, yeah, to say the least. Yeah, exactly. Ken's got the idea on that. So.
Can I cut you off? What were you saying?
Oh, I was just gonna go back in time a little bit because I think it's important that we say what a PA is.
Indeed.
What is a PA?
Yeah. So in the structure of the world of filmmaking in general, the folks who do everything from getting coffee and changing out trash cans to interacting with high-level producers and actors and directors and making sure that a set is functioning on just sort of a day-to-day level. There are the people who we know as production assistants, which short-term PA. And yeah, I consider them the nervous system of the nerve system of a production. Everything that the directors, ADs, anything that they have ideas or needs for, send it down the line. PAs go out and do it and make it happen.
Yeah, and so I think when talking about a PA, it's like you're paying your dues. I think that is part of the process. Now, a lot of people would say the PAs are the lowest of the low of the spectrum. Why is that? And
it definitely takes.
Is that wrong?
Yeah, I think it depends. It is definitely a starting point for many, many people. I have been on plenty of sets where you interact with PAs who have never worked a day in the industry, and they're just starting out with trying to figure out where they are in the production world, and then pretty quickly jump over to being a part of the electricians, or jump over to being part of the grip department, which handles most of the construction and building of sets, or camera department or anything like that.
How does one make that jump over? Whoa, that ended. We are. That was a big old poopy poop. Well, I wonder if we're still streaming. We might be streaming. My Discord just crashed. So I'm just wondering if we're still streaming. I mean, if I even have the internet. Let's go through this joy together. What say you? What say you? Huh. I think that Discord is gone to doom. I think Discord has crashed.
You're still on.
Am I?
You're online.
I am online.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys are streaming right now.
Well, I think that.
Yeah, Discord is done.
Discord is over.
It's that's what happened to me too.
It's definitely. Yeah, I can send you a Zoom link if you want.
Yeah, zoom it out. We'll zoom it.
All right.
I'll send it to Drew.
I'll text you the. Do you want me to just stream through the whole this?
Yeah.
I mean, because.
Yeah.
All right. All right. All right, cool. Well, that's exciting stuff. I wonder if I can even do this, if I have the bandwidth to. Wow, Discord just ate a biscuit. Isn't that exciting? It's just like, come on. I wonder how, like, if OBS can even that's not, I'm doing the wrong buttons here, clearly. losing my brain. Okay. Well, this is going to be the more exciting version of GGP. That, I mean, I feel like we're breaking news if everybody's Discord server failed, sort of simultaneous like. All right, I'm just gonna quit Discord and we're gonna move. If that's a big deal. Everybody losing Discord at the same time, making me work for this. Zoom. It's something that we have. Zoom. All right. Wow, that's really big. Starting the Zoom, streaming. Hey, we're still streaming, by the way.
Okay, amazing.
I think that's definitely a thing that exists that I'm gonna try and I've not experienced Discord just taking a big old poop off of that. Let's see if
Discord, you've never failed us before. What is wrong with you?
Well, it's just one of those things, I think. One of those things that we are.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, wow. Yeah, that has never happened. Because mine was just like, "Wah!" Apparently Discord is just a web browser that's styled. So like it suffers the same problems that any web browser would.
We just bring too many people to the podcast here, you know, and
Did we say something? We didn't say anything about Trump. What the fuck?
Not yet.
Not yet.
There's still plenty of time.
Well, I'm gonna have to pop off here in a few minutes to go do a tax meeting, but I will jump right back on right after that. So it'll be like 20 minutes. You guys keep going. I think you have a lot to talk about with film.
Sure. Yeah, I'm in the process of
reorchestrating. I understand. I get it.
Going through the motions of trying to make it look pretty again. So I don't know how exciting I'll be.
This is beautiful. This is beautiful. It's just me.
It's definitely
it's huge. Oh my God, look how big I am. Oh, hold on a second. I'm gonna do my. Wait, what's what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, wait.
Jedi.
We gotta do the Kermit the Frog meme, you know.
Oh my God, Drew. Okay, so Drew and I, we met in acting class, and we did Star Wars: A New Hope, a scene from it.
Yeah.
Where he played Luke and I was Han Solo, and our friend Gemma Bell played Leia, and she killed it. Why
Did you have the hair?
Have we not done your Luke, of course? I could play the Emperor. Oh my God, dude.
It would be also hilarious if we did that whole scene, you know, more comedy side, I think, but like the whole scene where it's like, have you ever heard of the stories of Dark Ages?
And you're like, no.
No. What's that? Yeah, like my only line.
Right. No. Like, what's with his name? Plagius. It sounds sick. Yeah.
But
you got to come back to class.
Yeah.
I've been put up by Kelly to actually just get you on into my circuitous way.
Wouldn't that have been a wild a trap, an intervention? Yeah. I actually just started a softball team, recreational. Really? Yeah. So we had our first game on Wednesday.
Hold on a second. I'm not trying to diss softball.
But softball's dangerous.
You started a softball team, and you're doing that instead of acting?
For now, that seems to be the case. I want to try and figure out timing for everything, but
I didn't know you were into softball.
I'm not, but I'm now into softball.
Who got you into softball?
So this is gonna basically transition us back to the earlier conversation, but yeah, I was on the set of a Dropout TV show, and I have cats. Hello, yeah, this is Binks. He is definitely a lap cat and will appear and disappear as he sees fit. Yeah. But so I was on set doing various tasks, and one of the other people on set was talking to someone else about a softball team that they were managing, and I was like, "Hey, I'm interested." And I
had nothing to do on Wednesday.
I didn't know it was Wednesday night until afterwards. So, but yeah, I did think that was very funny that that is what I'm doing on Wednesdays right now.
I saved somebody's life once at a softball game.
Yeah, well, tell us about it.
It was a girl that I knew. Somebody hit a foul ball, and the ball came up. I don't know if I saved her life, but I certainly saved her from getting massively hurt. And I caught the ball right above her head.
Oh wow!
When it was coming at her, it was definitely. It would have been a bad day.
Yeah. You're Ken Griffey Jr. or Clark Kent.
Yeah. Well, I did play baseball at the time, so I definitely.
I will pop off. I'll be right back, guys.
No, I was always terrible. I couldn't hit the stupid very well, so I just made myself very tiny. and made the batting area. Made it impossible for the pitcher to throw a strike. But I just played baseball. I didn't play softball.
I actually also in high school and middle school, I played baseball for my high school team. And that was exactly the same tactic I did. Just make myself as small as possible.
Just get in there, get those knees up and those shoulders down. It's kind of cheating.
Surprisingly difficult for the pitchers to get it in there, and the umpires rewarded us for it, So
oh yeah. It's insane. So I feel like I do have a lot of questions. I know I was never a PA. I skipped that whole thing. So I've PA'd for Fenn's projects here and there. So but not for work at all. And can anybody just be a PA?
Yeah, I think in the same way that anyone can start most jobs, you can become a PA. Obviously there are jobs that take degrees and technical skills and things like that that separate a lot of the industry jobs from regular jobs. Wait, did I say that right? Other way around, that separate regular jobs from industry jobs. I think that there's, and I think maybe a camera team, a grip team, and an electric team will yell at me for this, but I think that anyone can jump onto the construction side or to the electric side or camera department at the very bottom level and learn enough over time and through just working in those groups and working their way up. Yeah. In that same way, being a production assistant is fairly easy to pick up quickly. I think that a good production assistant is someone who has done it for a year, 2 years, or has a good head on their shoulder, and knows enough about what to expect on set, about how the stories move, how a day on set works to be able to anticipate the needs of a director, a first AD, a DP, a director of photography, all those kinds of those top level people on set, to then make the day move smoothly so that there are no problems. And if you have that experience, then you can actually, I think you get more opportunities to work on bigger and better projects. So yes and no. I don't know. Maybe I'm making it more complicated than.
I think we're gonna, because I like to get my microscopic on some of these things, and certainly etiquette is important beyond the ability and skill that they that PAs have. I think I would like to talk and demystify it, because I do think there's a difference between a PA that's just worked for a couple of days and somebody who's done it for a year or two or longer, and I know PAs that have worked the jobs for 10 or 15 years for that is you can make it into a career if you get hooked into a show, or if you're working for what's it called, the studio. If you're in the lot, and that's definitely a thing. What is kind of the difference between some random person that is hired off the street and maybe a PA? What skills would a good PA have?
Yeah, I think the best production assistants, because there are actually different roles that I think people can fill within being production assistants. Because one of the things that has to happen in order to become an assistant director, one of the people who really runs the set for the director, is you have to either have taken the AD trainee program through, I think it's what is it? Film LA? I don't remember exactly what group it is, but you can take an AD trainee program, which cuts your time to become an assistant director in half, or you end up collecting 600 call sheets that have your name as production assistant on it, and then you also have to prove that by putting your pay stub into a big old binder that then you send to the DGA, who then review every single one of the call sheets to make sure that they're accurate, they're good, they're within whatever scope they want to judge it by. And if you do that, then you become an official Directors Guild of America assistant director.
Sure.
But 600 days it's
a lot of days.
Without taking a single break or weekend, if you work every single day, it's 3 years of work.
Yeah.
And so practically it means about 5 years of being a production assistant before you can raise up to become a higher level. And
you have to find the jobs, because you don't necessarily work every day as a PA as well. I mean, I'm sure there are dry spells, and especially in the last 5 years, there's been a lot of dry spells for a lot of reasons that I'm sure we'll go into. I work as a AD on some stuff. I work as a director on some stuff, and I skipped ever being in the union, not just because none of the work that I was doing. I worked in music videos, I worked in short films, and certainly under the radar in Los Angeles. And now I live in a right to work state, and there's no union for this kind of work. So it's not. And I think that adds a lot of competition to bigger productions, for them to want to come and shoot a film here. And I think that's happening more and more, where a lot of production has left Los Angeles for a multitude of reasons. But if they did a film, the AD would be from LA. You know, the DP. They'd fly in all the people in grip and electric. They'd fly in all the people. The only people they would hire locally would be PAs. Is the experience that I've kind of noticed and working in films locally.
It is really interesting. The like, it's not quite hypocrisy or something, but it's sort of interesting that they do fly in everybody from outside of right to work states, especially, but production assistants they'll hire local. I think part of, if I was going to justify some of that, it's definitely that like a production assistant has to be ready to be both on set and offset and interact with the people of those local cities. So having someone who knows the city well and can interact with the personalities of the different cities is really, really valuable. You know, someone from New York coming to work in LA is going to have a very different experience chatting with a LA local resident walking their dog versus a random, you know, a Los Angeles PA working in like Atlanta, who's going to have a very different experience because they don't know the different neighborhoods. So there's a lot to be said about like having the department that has to interact with the people on and offset being more local. It is always a little frustrating on some of those kinds of things because we are the lowest paid on set and in many instances lower paid than even the equipment on set.
I've had that experience before, so I definitely understand that before I was never in the Animators Guild, but before there was one, they would try to get me to bill more for my equipment, so they don't have to, you know, show that a person worked, because a person working puts them in a different category than just renting some equipment. You pay different taxes, and having experienced major production failure from working on a film that was a front for international drug smuggling. It was definitely you know, it is kind of been, production has always been one of those things where you can kind of fudge the numbers a little bit and get into a lot of trouble. But I would like to go back to talking about PAs. So they call extras scenery. That's like a thing, and PAs have responsibilities, I think, when it comes to herding extras, because the director, they can't. I don't know if this is still a thing or not, but they can't talk to the PAs or talk to the extras, because as soon as they start directing extras, the extra gets elevated in some kind of way just by having a conversation, and they get around that by having the AD probably talk to the PAs to get them to do directing.
Yeah. I actually didn't know. I didn't know some of that. I don't know if it's still kind of put into practice, but in support of what you're saying, I don't think I've really seen many, if any, directors talking to our background folks, our extras, to really like place them, give them instructions, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's something new I didn't know.
Yeah, I think it's just something that I caught wind of. I don't know if it's real or not, but I do know that, you know, you get a little pay bump if you bring an extra closer and they're seen. I also experienced a lot because I was in visual effects, and so doing visual effects supervision, you don't really do anything. So I would spend time with the extras and hair and makeup typically, or they would put me in front of the camera and make me an extra just because I was doing nothing. Have you had that experience where people will, you know, say, "Oh, we need somebody to be here," or does that?
Yeah, well, and so I've been on a number of shows. I worked on it was basically like a micro budget of a micro budget kind of movie called, let's see, it was Battle at the Grand. Oh no, now I'm forgetting the title of the movie, but it had like Dolph Lundgren in it, and
Nice.
and like, yeah, it was a wild little movie. And and Terrence Howard was our main star. And my role on that was key PA, was working as right. So kind of transitioning a little back to an earlier conversation, there are different roles for production assistants, and
Sure.
what you're talking about with being more focused on like a background PA, though people who do background PA stuff are a different breed in my experience, because they have to potentially memorize and get to know 60, 100, 200 random people for a single day or a couple days, and they have to know them well enough to be like, Jonathan, I need you over in that direction right now. Susie, I need you to go over there. And the director or the assistant director in our ear isn't going to be able to remember their names because they're focused on the stuff in front of them. So they're like, we need the person with the blue shirt and the curly hair.
Yeah.
You walk into a room full of 60 people and half of them have blue shirts and curly hair. You have to remember who they were by name, whether they appeared on screen, the different important details about a person, and then to be able to interact with all sorts of different personalities.
It's not easy. Yeah,
it really isn't.
I mean, certainly, I was a PA on one shoot, and they asked me to bring some water to one of the stars. I think it was Shelley Duvall or something. And I don't think I could pick Shelley Duvall out on a lineup. And there were hundreds of extras around her, and I was just like looking for anybody that's a star. And the AD was getting mad at me because I was in the middle of all. They were ready to shoot, and they had hundreds of extras ready to go. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. She's gonna have to go thirsty like everybody else. So I didn't know.
It really is confusing.
It is. It is. But I also, I think that a lot of productions would fall apart without PAs, because it's like, how do you get things done faster? Right. And a lot of times, if you don't have somebody on a task making it happen, you're just sitting there, burning daylight, and you got nothing when it comes to things happen. Like, and I think they help around the edges on such a degree, keeping communication going through departments, and it's like running an op of some kind.
Yeah, well, and honestly, it's one of my ultimate goals once I become filthy stinking rich, is to have a specifically a production assistant like company, a company where we focus on training everybody to be comfortable on set and have different teams to be able to give to different productions, because kind of what you're saying. An assistant director who wants things to run smoothly, especially on their end, right? Their whole job on set is to work with all of the top departments to make the day run smoothly. They're the scheduling department, and they're the ones who run the day. The director's whole world is, an assistant director is trying to clean up the director's world so that they don't have to think about how long a lighting setup is going to be, how long the camera is going to be, how long a set build is going to be, and they can just focus on talking to the actor. They can focus on small details of set dressing and camera look once it's up. And so an assistant director, in order to make everything happen smoothly and schedule everything beforehand, they want a good team that's going to follow everything quickly and fill in gaps and be adaptable and flexible. And yeah, exactly what you're saying. They need to be kind of an elite hit squad of just ready folks to jump in whenever and however is necessary. And so kind of the transition to the earlier commentary, I was on this micro budget film, and we were out in the desert. Terrence Howard is sitting there in combat camo armor, and we're shooting a film within a film, and he's giving a crazy speech, and they're like, hey, we need people to be in the film within a film thing. Are you interested in jumping in there? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So I ended up being basically a leather clad Nazi for a film within a film called Moses versus the Nazis. I ended up playing one of the ghillie suit bad guys in again, another film within a film called Arachnophobia. And specifically it was Irachnophobia. And so, yeah, again, it's like one day I'm interacting with some of these big stars and having conversations with them and trying to make sure that their makeup looks are on time and getting them to set and, being a go-between between the director, assistant director, and the actors. And then the next day I'm playing a leather-clad Nazi being shot by Moses, so yeah. Just all sorts of crazy.
Did they give you a bump for that?
So for that one, especially because of the way that it is, I think I got a credit, but no pay bump for that. No Screen Actors Guild SAG voucher for it either. Yeah. Though it has happened enough times now that it is a joke. That if a production assistant or one of the crew gets on, is like, pay bump, getting a voucher, and it never happens. So.
Right. I mean, and I think that's something that I've kind of noticed that isn't cool. It's a little exploitive that there would be. You're doing a task that if you were an extra, you would get a voucher. You would be able to get in to the Actors Guild, and then PAs don't have that. I mean,
yeah, and even honestly, I've interacted with a number of van drivers, right? The transportation department, who are Teamsters. Because of how strong their union is all over the nation, I've interacted with a lot of them who are also in the Screen Actors Guild because they've had to drive the limousine in a scene, or they've had to drive a car or truck in a scene, and their union fights for them. And so they get that voucher, and you only need 3 of a certain kind of voucher to get in as an actor. So, and you do get some of those recognitions, and you get jobs, especially for the Teamsters, you get jobs as the person driving on screen, because they don't have to go through the process of hiring an actor and knowing that they have job training. They already do. They're in the Teamsters union. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It is an exploitative part of, but unfortunately it is sort of the least exploitative part of being a production assistant. And so in the long term, it would definitely be a good, a helpful and necessary negotiation point for later down the road, but especially for the groups that are starting in with the for production assistant unions, right? Local 111 for the commercials, and the Instagram, it's, I think, production assistant. It might just be production assistant union. I don't remember what their group. They're actually, interestingly, they're speaking at the Bernie Sanders rally this Saturday, which is pretty crazy. we had a town hall scheduled for Saturday, and then Bernie Sanders came in, and so people were like, well, shit, what do we do here? And Bernie Sanders' team apparently reached out and said, hey, we'd love to have you and, work together, because you are a part of this world that we believe in. So
yeah. And
so that's pretty cool.
That's definitely where Bernie is. I think he's very pro-union. Certainly workers' rights. As a PA, it's 8 hours in, you're working flat rate, right? Is that it's 12 hours, you still have the same flat rate. Is there a time where you're like, all right, we're 15 hours in, still working flat rate?
it's the way that it used to be, not a guaranteed, like you'd have to actually negotiate with the people to say, okay, I'd like this amount for a guaranteed amount of time. And sometimes you'd interact with the producers or directors and they'd basically say, no, we can't do that. And then they'd move on to someone else, right? You had asked earlier before the Discord crash, like what the differences are between like someone who just jumps on as a production assistant their first day versus later on. And is there a difference? Are they the lowest paid? Should they be the lowest paid? That kind of conversation. And it is easy enough for people to jump on and just be a body, to the point where I think the attitude is, if one production assistant is working, we can just hire another person. Right. There's 100 people who are eager and looking to get an opportunity, a shot to be on set. So why should I have to think or worry about, that department at all? And I definitely think that there is, we've kind of talked a little bit about this, that like there is a huge difference between someone who is used to the flow of set and someone who isn't. Right. And now I've completely forgotten the original question that you asked, or the comment you were talking about, which is...
I was just talking about long hours.
Yes.
That was the question.
And
pacing yourself is not like you get somebody on the first day, you're at hour 15, and somebody who's not been a PA very long is probably going to be pretty unraveled at 15 hours in.
And honestly, these days, I usually plan my day with the expectation that we're actually going to work a minimum of about 13 to 15 hours a day. That currently, the way that they have transitioned the contracts is whatever your agreed upon paycheck, it's for a guaranteed 12-hour shift. So if you work 5 hours, you still get paid that full amount for what it is. If you work up to 12 hours, you get paid the agreed upon amount. After the 12 hours, you start getting double overtime costs. And so, at least in California, I think it has become pretty consistent for working in Atlanta, working in Vancouver, working in New York. But there are slightly different rules per state, so that can get a little dicey. But currently, if you're working in Los Angeles, if you're working in California, you generally get a guaranteed 12-hour shift and then double overtime after that. So 15 hours, after 12 hours is where you start really making the money. And I've looked this up before and broken this down, but usually the 12-hour guarantee still brings production assistants at making just above minimum wage oftentimes, because you work the eight hours at $16, $17 an hour, and then it goes time and a half, and then
when I was in LA, it was still $7 an hour. It wasn't, and it was only recently. It was 2018, 2019, right? Is that correct? Where production assistants were making $7 an hour.
Yep. And it's insane, especially because of how much the cost of living in Los Angeles and San Francisco is.
Sure.
So,
well, depending on the project, it's insane because of how much money they make off a lot of these projects. I've noticed in the last 25 years, I moved to LA in 2001. You know, the amount of money, like there's not as much production, but the money per production, they've gone into the bigger budgets and the special effects. We're talking about, you know, 50, 60, 80 million, $100 million budget for something. You've got a person that is making, you know, $1 million, who's an actor, standing next to somebody who is making $15 an hour.
Yep, and they work how they less hours.
Yeah, how they justify this. I mean, I get that, you know, actors are specialized and people want to see actors and stuff like that. But it's also how do you process that when you're on set and you're working with this star who's clearly paid, you know, they've worked hard, they're good at what they do. But it seems like the balance is it's like working next to a king or something.
Yeah, as a like general or as the like financier or the, you know, it's like you definitely I think that you're hitting the nail on the head a little bit of the like modern filmmaking has transitioned back to a studio system-esque style where the money is the point, and any way that you can get, you know, they're assuming that the investment into the brand name of an actor, the visuals of an actor, are going to pay back tenfold. You know, I mean, looking at like Marvel movies, someone like a Robert Downey Jr. can do any project in the world, and it's still going to end up coming back to Marvel and Disney because his visuals and his acting is so heavily tied to being Iron Man. And so spending, you know, $10 million on a project solely for Robert Downey Jr. is pittance for the, like, you know, couple $1 billion they're going to make over the lifetime of a single movie of his. But it is a little surreal to be on set with these people who are making millions and millions of dollars and interacting with them as just regular people and having regular conversations with them and knowing that they are just human beings who need to eat, who need to sleep, who need to go about their day regularly.
Sure.
And, you know, part of my desire is to become an actor, to become a director. And so I wanted to learn a little bit more about like that world, which is why I ended up working or taking this class with Will. And it is, I don't want to underplay that every single role on set, actor, director, DP, takes skill and time and effort to get used to, because in kind of the same way that like the Screen Actors Guild, SAG, has this issue of like anybody can step on and be an actor, you know, but it takes time, it takes talent, it takes effort to become an A-list, a B-list, a C-list. And it takes experience for that. And in that exact same way, production assistants need that same thing. You know, anyone can step in and get a radio and stand at a corner and tell people, hey, please don't walk onto our set. But an experienced person is going to know, okay, this is a moment where we don't need to get into an argument with the people on the street. Okay, I see a grip. Part of the construction team is doing their best to try and build a set quickly, but there's lots of people in the way. So running over and like telling everybody, hey, move out of the way. We need to clear this space to let them work, or quiet everybody down, or just having that instinct.
You gotta have the language as well. Like if the PA doesn't know the language, they're not going to be as useful, or
yeah,
to know how to be in the right place or the right time, or even know what's happening.
Yeah,
so
it is a skill in and of itself to learn how to eavesdrop and to pay attention to like when important conversations might be happening, and to let either your key PA, the person in charge, go over and like listen in or let them know, hey, maybe an important conversation, and then to go fact find later on, talk to everyone on set to be like, okay, so how long is it going to take for this hair and makeup change, this costume change to take place? How long is it going to take for us to move the camera? How long is it going to take? And what you're saying, like having the vernacular, the language involved is kind of a funny experience, because it's almost like speaking English, but not quite.
Yeah, no, it's not the same. And then there's I mean, I don't know a lot of PA terms necessarily, but there's certainly etiquette of an expectation that a PA kind of knows what's going on and is a little bit ahead of production of what's next a little bit, or anticipating needs of some of the people involved in the project, and is on task. I mean, I know that in my productions where I've hired PAs to do things who weren't super skilled, they're talking about their projects to me, and I'm like, we're not on that project. That's not what we're doing now. We've got a focus. I have till 10 o'clock, and all this shit has to be done before then. So, yeah, I don't care about your horror movie.
Yeah, exactly. And there's plenty of opportunity at like a lunchtime, or if there's a wrap party or after set's done, to like be able to approach someone and say, hey, I know you're busy and I know you're on your way to the next thing, but you mind if I talk to you about this thing? But like you said, you have to have the instincts. You have to know when the appropriate moments are for that, because there are plenty of sets where it's like we are 15 hours behind and we need to like get going. There's been 3 days of delays and now is not the time to talk about your horror movie. But it really is. And that's one of the reasons why I think that like a production assistant union is going to be really important, because the higher a budget you get, it's sort of paradoxical in this way, but the higher budget you get, the more confidence the production assistants have in being able to say no, because there is usually enough money to then fill in the gaps that a production assistant takes on smaller budget things. So you get people who worked and work on Disney and work on Hulu projects and Paramount stuff, where they look at someone who's like, hey, we need a trash can over here. We need, someone at the corner over there. And they're like, that's not my job. We're not going to do that. And I think that we should be able to have the conversation of what actually a production assistant's roles are on set, and not just sort of like have to figure it out every single new set, because it is slightly different per set as well.
Yeah, the lower budget, I'm sure production assistants, they edge their way into, do you guys like suddenly you're in the camera department, or suddenly you're in art, or talent.
And honestly, so for me personally, I grew up with a fairly large family on my mom's side, and all of them, every single one of them, are like CEOs and corporate people. And so everybody has a plan. Everybody has an idea. So many chefs in the kitchen, to the point where like you either have to have a big personality or you have to be ready to listen or be flexible in some way.
Sure.
So for me, interacting with a lot of people is like a very comfortable thing. So I'm super ready to like jump in and help with A-list talent, B-list talent, whoever, just like working with the talent, working with the directors, and working towards more of like a first assistant director role. There are other people who are way better at doing the background wrangling and doing the call sheet preparation and doing all sorts of paperwork in that world, and it really just ends up being what your personality, you know, fits best into. Career PAs where like their whole world is just wanting to be on set, wanting to be a connection between crew and the world of creating these exciting stories. It means you still have like this massive diversity of personalities that you can have on set and that don't really appear until there is a year or more of experience. You know, you have to make the many mistakes where you talked to the wrong person and they were upset with how you interacted with them, or you tried to approach an actor and someone came up and said, do not do that. Like, they are not someone who we can interact with, and we are going to get into some major issues if they.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, there's definitely some. I would say if you're relatively green, it's easy to talk to somebody, and you probably shouldn't. or you know, the same. I mean, I've certainly had conversation with like John Malkovich and you know, a number of other stars and my experience, and you know, he walked up to me and we just started having a conversation. So it like
it really is. It just like you said, it's dependent.
If it's on set and you're a PA, it's a little intimidating because you kind of have a job to do, and they're just standing there between takes, and you're like in the middle of something, and it's like I got some kind of thing. Gotta move on.
And you really do. You feel like stuck sometimes because you're like, this is someone important that I need to like actually listen to, but my AD is in my ear yelling like, "Hey, where the hell is this? You know, prop? We're waiting." Like, you know. So,
you know, this is a person that also can, you know, you could work for their production company, or it could be a potential job. Every conversation you have is kind of like networking and finding the next gig is what I've noticed, or finding people to be in your own projects. So I think that's interesting. So being on set is super hard. How do you get endurance? How do you
It's all in the equipment that you have. So great shoes are like a often talked about conversation topic on set. For a lot of people, it is coffee and Celsius and energy drinks to follow through on that. And then making sure to take like a few months between longer projects to like rest and recuperate and figure it out. Because really, like on a 6-month project where you're again doing 15-hour days for 5 days out of the week, you have absolutely no time to do anything with friends, to really sleep or get food into your body. And so weekends end up being like, throw the clothes in the laundry, go take a nap, wake up, change to the dryer, take another nap, and then before you know it, now I've got to wake up at 5 a.m. to get to set before everybody else. So it definitely is a hard life, and is one of the reasons why assistant directors especially have the shortest lifespan now. Their average lifespan currently is 54 years old because of heart attacks. So
that's crazy. I know I got a friend that he's a working AD, you know, and I met him working. I was in the art department and doing post on the thing, and you know, he's done everything. Like he's definitely one of those like in the middle of it, and he's probably the hardest working AD that I've met in the pro world. And you know, it's not an easy life. I mean, certainly everything is a stress, and the food isn't necessarily always the best, and so stress and you know, if you don't watch yourself, I mean, but that's any job in Los Angeles. I mean, or any job in the film world. I mean, stars die extraordinarily young, often. And too often.
And it's a lot of, like, you know, I think the industry is microcosms of the rest of the United States and the rest of the world, where it's different levels of people trying to just live their daily lives and work a job. But our world is a lot more visual and a lot more like in front of everyone else's eyes. So like the expectations that especially people at the top have end up feeling more consequential. But in the same way that a person who works for like Spectrum or for the electric company has to wake up bright and early to fight LA traffic in order to get to their job on time, and then spend all day walking and moving and driving. There's a lot of I don't know. It's a job like anyone else, and the difference, at least for me, is, and I would never change any anything in the world for this, is that you get to then be on set and see someone dive out of a building with an explosion behind them, or you get to be on the set where everybody's in military gear and there's gunshots and explosions, or you get to be in the room where someone has this like deep emotional moment, and you get to be the first one to see it. You get to be the one to like experience and have the conversation with those people before and after. So definitely it's a hard life, and it's not for everyone. And plenty of people get to 2 years, 3 years into it and are just like,
burnout is
I
real.
need to, So
speaking of burnout, can we take just a short break?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll be right back. And we're back. I think we got some stream chat questions, and we also, I have one more question I want to ask before we start that, and it's, how do you get the gig? I mean, do you how many of those like websites have you filled all your information out on just to never get any response? I think that any new person to Los Angeles or New York or Atlanta, I'm sure at this point, or anywhere, they've run into this website where it seems like you fill it out, you send that information off in the world, and then
never hear anything for
ever.
My experience with that was a wild one, because I said earlier I moved out here in 2017, and it was like a year and a half of sending messages to people on Facebook groups and going to even places like Craigslist as like I hope I'm not going to work on a porn shoot, like kind of conversations. And it really approaches like you would a small town approaches anything, which is it just ends up being who getting lucky, showing up at the right moments, and then after that it's just showing your skill and your work ethic and all that kind of stuff, especially for grips, electrics, and
but those are unions. Those are
right. So for those groups especially, it's they can work a regular job, and then someone within their regular job can be like, hey, I've actually got a job on set, you interested? And they'll then get on that way. For a production assistant, it's way more like you can get lucky by having a conversation in a bar and express interest, and someone then says, oh, actually, we do need a couple extra bodies. Do you want to hop on? Or it can be the Nepo baby, the nepotism route, where you happen to know a person in production, a family member. So I personally got very lucky, where I was right before pandemic was happening. I was working as a manager for an escape room in Glendale. And one of the people I was working with, we connected and hung out a lot, and then pandemic hit. And so we continued to hang out over pandemic. And it turned out that they happened to be directly connected to the film industry. And so at some point, someone came in as the pandemic was opening up, and was coming into LA to start shooting stuff. And I was like, hey, do you mind throwing my resume at them? And they said, sure. And so I ended up working on a RuPaul Christmas movie as the first ever job I did.
That sounds awesome.
Having, basically only the knowledge of having seen the TV shows with various partners that I've had in the past.
Yeah.
And then showing up on set and being like, oh God, I have to know every detail about this because it's all big personalities and I have no idea what I'm doing on set. I don't know. We went from our home base where all of the drag queens were getting dressed and set up near the abandoned Sears building outside of downtown LA, to then having like a 10-minute van ride into downtown LA where we were shooting a Christmas movie in July. So, it was like all sorts of new things, having to interact with downtown Los Angeles people and drag queens and new to the industry. So it really is. And so after that, I basically just hustled and worked and tried to have conversations with the assistant directors. But
that film that you were working on, you got contact from that, or that project contact from that, and that's where it came from. It didn't come from. I'm just saying that I never one time ever got a job by applying. It was always networking. It was always hustling, having conversations.
100%.
It is. I mean, I think that you can get on set as background without talking to anybody. That is a thing, but that is a certain amount of hustle as well. But
yeah, and honestly,
if you're going to be a PA, you're not gonna. You've got to find a way. You got to be able to have a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, there's literally no, college degree to production assistant pipeline type thing. You can't do. You can't apply to a. Sorry, this was why I brought up the thing earlier. You can't apply to become a construction worker or an EMT. Or photographer or something like that, and then work your way onto a set. You have to go to 10 billion of these like Facebook events where we're like meet and greet all the other production assistants, where 90% of the people are like, hey, I'd really like to work on set. And you look at them like, oh, actually, I would also like to work on set. So we can exchange numbers and hope for the best. But this is a useless connection for the moment.
Never talk again.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
On the Instagrams.
But you do get that network as it expands, and if you connect with people on some kind of level, they'll remember your number. And certainly, if there's an opening and you've created some trust with a person, they're going to call you and say, hey, we need you.
And it's also a little bit of luck in terms of I should say, I personally believe in the idea that like you make your own luck. There are doors open and close all the time. And when we talk about being lucky, we talk about being in front of the door when that door opens and you step through. But the work of getting yourself in front of that door is something that shouldn't be kind of shoved to the side. Like, doing what you're saying, having conversations with 10 billion people and making sure to, especially with the people that you really vibe with, text them every once in a while. I get into these moments where I'm not working, and I will literally go through my contacts list to all of the people who I know on as an assistant director or a production assistant, and just check in, shoot a little message saying, hey, hope you're surviving all of the fires, or hope these strikes are not killing you too much in terms of being able to afford rent. And those conversations then lead to a moment where someone is like, oh, my AD who I normally work with asked me to work, but I'm working, and I remember a day ago I got a text message from this person who I interacted with at a bar, and I'll shoot their number over to the AD and hope for the best. So
then you do have a Bible. I think most PAs get a little Bible with everybody's phone number or something like that, which is its own amount of like you just shared my number with everybody.
Well, and it's the exact same etiquette that we were talking about earlier. Like I've had conversations with PAs and with ADs who have said, like, when they were first starting or when they were doing it, they texted the executive producer because they had their number on the production Bible, and it was the worst decision they've ever made, or no response, or I think there's even a scene in TV show called maybe This Is Love, or where one of the characters drafts an email to a major Hollywood producer and accidentally includes his the email chain that he had with his mom to try and like craft the right email, and that is the kind of story that you hear sometimes that someone sends an EP an email with their mom saying, "This looks amazing, honey. They're gonna love you," and
Sure.
But
well, that happens. It happens in national security, and it happens occasionally when you're gonna bomb some other country. But it also it also happens like so. I think that this is a good moment to do a transition.
No. You don't get to throw a little haymaker, duck out of the way, and act like you didn't do it.
Jeezy Doctor Forever.
Yes, that's literally what I was gonna say. Hit it.
Yeah, when video leaks of an actor yelling at the film crew, like we saw with Christian Bale or Tom Cruise, who's responsible for that? Is it the PA? Did they shoot the video and leak it out, or is it?
It's going to depend on the level of security that you have on set and the situation. It's a lot of times PAs, but it's also a lot of times the camera people. They're the ones who, because they're spending all day with a camera pointed at an actor and kind of having control over set, that will see something like that and they'll snap a picture or they'll start recording a video.
Yeah, fuck it, we'll do it live.
Yeah, literally, and they will just post it as anonymously as possible, and then it gets reshared by people online, and it's always complicated. I worked on one of the Star Wars TV shows as an intellectual property protection department person. They called us set troopers. Mm-hmm. And our entire job was to walk around set and make sure that the people who were allowed to take videos and stuff were the ones with their phones out. And if you weren't, we'd have to send up a little communication to our bosses and say, hey, this person is on their phone and it kind of looks like they're videotaping or taking a photo. You got to handle it. And then they try and go and have a private conversation with those people. But I have heard stories about people who have been fired for taking videos on set, on especially those higher level jobs.
Yeah, of course, especially if you got like an NDA or something that I
think isn't there always an NDA on those shows?
Fired isn't the motion. You might get sued. But I never signed an NDA for anything. I just I think I've been a part of the conversations where like the NDA was talked about, and then I just didn't sign. I don't like signing things if I don't have to, so I'll push it. If I got to, I got to. But I think NDAs are a failure of trust, and I also think that
I disagree with that wholeheartedly.
That nobody cares. I think nobody cares about my short film, your short film, and Bill's. Like,
that's just age talking.
Nobody cares.
That's just a little Jade talking.
Well, I also think that there is again, it's going to depend on the production company too. Because again, like working on something like the RuPaul Christmas movie, worked on the L Word, worked on the stuff with Dropout, formerly College Humor. There is a certain amount of trust that the people who are on set they can take pictures, they can take videos, but if they don't post it online, or use it as some sort of like reveal thing, there's a lot more understanding around that interaction than say on Disney, who are a little draconian with their intellectual property in general.
I mean, I have friends that work on sitcoms or shows, and I see behind the scenes footage, not usually on set, but just around the set fairly often. Like, and it seems like it's no big deal for most things, but I could say if you're in the Marvel world and that secret gets out, you're done for. I worked on probably about 4 or 5 Marvel cartoons, and it
cool.
was nobody. They didn't care. I mean, they literally didn't care. I mean, I could have given away the ending, and this is it's decades ago. So I mean, it's a long time ago.
I think it's a little bit different now because, I mean, maybe it's just the type of project, but I think this would be interesting to talk about. At the time you're talking about, Ken, you have network television.
Sure.
Now, right, everything is...
We have network television, but it's called streaming.
Yeah.
And so the rules are a little different, right? I mean, because, like, I'm not waiting week to week, although you can, and I've seen these billboards around Hollywood that are like, here's this new movie only in cinemas, and kind of that push. So what are your opinions on all that, the sort of state of the industry, and Ken, yours too?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the industry has a lot of, and maybe it's always been like this, but from my experience, the industry is pretty inundated right now with people who are focused on money, and not enough focused on creativity. And we were vaguely talking about this earlier, that like a lot of films currently trying to shoot in Los Angeles are really, really small or really, really big. And there's no in between because it's too expensive. Yeah, I know. And even like
I watched that Die. I mean, that was my experience. that LA had a pretty thriving film community and market. Early 2000s, September 11th did dry up the industry for a little while. 2008, the industry died a little bit. It's just these big things keep on destroying, and every time the stock market hits a little bump, production shuts down across the board.
How's production right now? We're not in a bump. We're in a free fall.
I'm going to say that you are in trouble. So, but you've been in trouble. If you're working now in LA, you figured out a way to navigate through some really difficult times.
Yeah, it really is like the joke among millennials and Gen Z and folks is I'm tired of living through another once in a lifetime event.
It's literally just been our freaking existence.
Genuinely,
we're looking it up last night at Denny's.
Shout out
you
Denny's.
Should totally come back to our Wednesday night Denny's time.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to.
I haven't been to Denny's since I was goth in high school, or maybe college.
I know, in the coolest of times. Look, you can play your softball thing and then come to Denny's, okay?
Yeah.
Okay? Anyway, we're talking about generations and shit. And, I was pontificating as I do. And so people were fact checking because I am full of shit. Well, we started getting into like how can you tell if someone is of a certain generation? Well, obviously the years they were born, but it's also sort of general attitudes. And this is generally culturally based. So like someone who's a millennial of the right age, but was born in China is not necessarily going to be considered a millennial, right? You born in China?
No, but I lived in Japan for 5 years, ages 3 to 8.
Did?
So yeah, so I was out of. Actually, this is exactly.
What?
Yeah. I'll go back to that conversation in a second, but like, I was born in '94, and so technically I am the very, very tail end of
you're a millennial,
is considered to be a millennial. But I lived in Japan for ages 3 to 8, and so that was so I have no context for what people literally my age have for early childhood and stuff like that. So
I get that. Although the thing is, like, for example, I was born, a while ago. I was born in 82. So do I remember 1983? Yes. I remember going to see Return of the Jedi. I mean, do I really remember it? What I'm trying to say is, like, if you're born in 94, from 94 to 98, yeah.
Sure. But I guess my point is, like, the millennial experience, I mean, really, the millennial experience in my head is like late 80s through the 90s, right? Like, you have to be a conscious existing adult.
Well, 80s through the 90s.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Yeah.
And that, like, the transition period in the early 2000s to the whatever is what I consider a zillennial, like someone who is cusp.
Yeah, you are absolutely.
Which I fully
a micro generation.
And
that's
it really.
That's the thing, is like a millennial knows what analog is, knows how the internet like was ramping up and saw societies change.
Mm-hmm.
And then when social media comes in, was like, whoa, social media. Whereas a Gen Z person always had the internet. It was just the staple of life. Analog was something way back in the day.
Yeah, analog is something you do on your road trip with your camera, you know, like
Gen Z, this is how I know if somebody's Gen Z, and this is not actually, fuck that disclaimer. It is a judgment. Do they know what Nirvana is? Because I haven't met one that does.
Like, I mean, you were born. You could be reincarnated.
Oh my God, you could. I think the avatar has to wait a year, though, isn't it? Though
I don't know.
I think you have to.
I think it's
pretty
possible.
Sure.
Yeah, I was.
That's a serious compliment. I'm just saying.
I was on IRC, I think, by 94, 95.
IRC.
Maybe 96.
Drew, do you know what IRC is?
I don't actually.
Yeah, he doesn't know what IRC is. I barely know what IRC is. Like an old man.
What is that? A drug? Like, what is this?
Internet chat relay. Relay chat. It's instant messenger before any of that happened.
We had
BBS bulletin board system. It's pretty much proto-internet.
Right.
Yeah, it's all text-based. You have like the weird graphics that are
HTML
like,
and
speak.
No HTML.
Yeah, I don't think they use it. Yeah,
it's the same general idea of like you're programming yourself into the group chat.
If you
more than you would today,
Weird Science or like any of those '80s movies, right? Real Genius. God, that's
sure.
Hackers.
We were
that kind
talking
of stuff.
about Real Genius the other day.
Just because Val.
Yeah, he was amazing. I met him once.
He's awesome.
He came to our studio. I used to do journalism. He came by, and it was about the time Charlie Sheen was kind of going through that melting, being a little bit terrible. And he was having a conversation with Emilio Estevez, and it was a little touching to say, like, he was checking in on Charlie, a little bit, like, it wasn't judgmental, because one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize is they're cruel to stars. I mean, that judgment, everybody's a people. I mean, yeah, people do shitty things. Yeah, what Charlie did was super fucking shitty. I'm not gonna give excuses for that, but checking in, like, genuinely concerned about, is he gonna be all right? We're all kind of like, I don't think he's gonna be okay. Clearly he's around, and that was a big fall. I mean,
yeah, it's such a complicated placement, right? Because one of the things that Will and I were learning in our class together is that you have to be private and public. You have to spend your whole life being extremely emotional on set, because like it's not just it's not like acrobatics or dance moves where you can practice a certain type of body movement, build the muscle, and then do it on command in front of hundreds of thousands of people. It is a process of going through your emotions to get to that spot where you can do it 10 times on set in front of 60 people who are all watching you, and you have to act like it's the most intimate or private moment in the world. And so, like, a lot of people who potentially don't do the and take the time to like take care of themselves, separate themselves from the industry, from the people involved in the industry. They don't take the time to reaffirm who they are. You can just shake apart until you're, at the pure and utter whims and mercy of people who just want to talk about exploitation, who just want to use your image to make millions of dollars off of you and go have you throw parties and make this like studio system-esque, image of you and control your life until you are, putty in their hands.
Done.
So
it used up.
Yeah, exactly. And so again, like kind of what we were talking about in a different sense, the burnout can be extreme, and with actors especially, it's so visual, it's so in all of our faces, and faces like TMZ are constantly flying drones over your house, so yeah. It's intense and upsetting, and you really have to like want to get into it.
Right. Well, so, and when you play a villain or like a child molester, or people will see you on the street and they'll like you are that person, and I'm sure there is a threatening there's a number of actors that did too good a job over time, and you just see them as that person.
Yeah.
Old dude who played Joffrey.
Yeah, that's definitely the modern famous example of it, that like people will go up onto the street to him and be like, fuck you, and I can't believe you fucking did that, and really like go after him. And it was like, I've seen conversations, interviews with him being like, hey, on the one hand, yeah, scary as hell, but like on the other hand, it's you almost take it as a compliment, and in to some extent that like you did a good job to the point where someone is creating the parasocial relationship with you and that character and you and them. And
they genuinely hate me.
Right. Like, yeah, exactly. Oh my God, what an exciting thing.
But the reason it works for him is because nobody'd seen him in anything else. They believed him as being that person. When you see an actor in films over and over and over again, like you feel like that person in a different way, like,
yeah,
that they're not necessarily the character. They're always going to be, you see Mel Gibson in a thing. He's always going to be Mel Gibson in a thing. You see,
Harrison Ford.
He's always going to be Harrison Ford.
Han Solo.
Now I've got a question for the two of you, and this might completely age you guys out, so I apologize in advance for this. But a little while ago, there was the singer Chappell Roan, who got into like vague, it's like controversy is going to be the nicest term, I guess, where she actively said to a fan who came up to her on the street and said, "Can we take a photo?" She said, "Absolutely fucking not. Do not approach me." And I am curious, sort of in this same vein, like, what do you guys think about like the interaction between?
I had an experience like that with Adam Sandler once.
Oh, really?
Really quick. Before we diverge, I do want to actually answer the question. But two, Chappell Roan, is she the musician who has the big red hair and has like it's like Gustav Klimt style image? Yeah. Just like the saturation turned up.
Yeah,
I know who you're talking about. Continue, Ken.
Well, I mean,
I want to make sure I knew who we're talking about.
And I think I've told this story on this. I tell this story a lot because it's something that really bothered me. It was when I smoked cigarettes. I don't smoke cigarettes anymore, but when I was in my 20s and would live forever, and so I was outside a Radio Shack, and I had my little white shirt and my pants on. It was right next to Genghis Khan.
R.I.P. Radio Shack.
Yeah, and I was smoking a cigarette. I was just hanging out by the door because 2001 Los Angeles is a different world than it is today. Adam Sandler walks up with his group of people, and And I'm like, I didn't move. I still just sitting there smoking a cigarette. I was like, oh, hey, you're Adam Sandler. And he looks at me like, oh, hey, you're a fuck up. I didn't even ask him for a signature or a photo, or it was before photos, but he was like genuinely mean to me, and he was like escalating a little bit.
It was
and
before photos.
Yeah.
Well, it was before. It was like I think I had a
it's not the cell phone
flip
like
phone.
You're like weak.
Yeah, I had a 320 pixel flip phone, maybe, that you couldn't get the photos off the phone. The photos.
Oh yeah, no, I know what you're talking
stayed with
about.
the phone.
That's right. That's right.
It's a Sasquatch photo of I swear it's Adam Sandler.
Adam Sandler was an asshole to you? Are you just being an ass? Adam Sandler's supposedly the nicest person.
He was
since Jesus.
But everybody has bad days. So like, to defend the artist,
Chaperone.
the musician,
Yeah,
Chaperone, it could have been a bad day. I mean, there's any number of time or instance. Like, I ran into Mark Maron a couple of weeks ago, and he was super chill. If I have a conversation with them and I have mutual friends with somebody who's a star, or like have a connection in some way, I'm gonna try and reach out. But I also read the room. And I'm very careful with making that introduction. If it's on a film set and I'm working, probably because if I'm on a film set these days, I'm running the show. But
yeah.
Well, Drew, what do you think about?
Yeah, where's your brain at?
Chaperones.
Yeah, I think, as someone who's a major people pleaser, I think that I probably wouldn't have approached it that in that same way. I think that the conversation, I mean, there's so much crazy shit going on in the world right now that like the idea of approaching parasocial relationships feels like a secondary issue in my head. So like I'm sort of gonna give a on the one hand, on the other hand kind of answer. But I think that like I wouldn't have handled it the way that she did. She kind of approached it by yelling at the fan and in Instagram chats and things like that, she was like, don't fucking talk to me. Like, my job is to be on stage performing. That is where I do my work. If you see me on the street, I am not at work, which means my job is not to interact with you. My job is not to be at your beck and call. Like, so I agree with the sentiment. But I think that everybody has to kind of establish it for themselves and be allowed to establish it for themselves. Because, I mean, we look at people like Britney Spears, who just because of conservatorships, which are evil in and of themselves, but also because places like TMZ,
but yeah, sure.
Yeah. They just like the controlling and constant invasion of your life can easily lead to crash outs and burnouts, and
all right,
you should be allowed to like establish the boundary of like, I'd like to be a regular person to some extent on the street, even if
my deal is this. Okay, I gotta say this is bullshit. I gotta say this is utter trash. No, I completely disagree.
You gotta have one of these sounds.
Exactly. This is why.
This is bullshit.
This is why. Because there is a give and a take, right? Like, to use the metaphor, to get your cake and eat it too. Like, I don't know much about Chaperone, but I do know she's a celebrity. I know that she's I like her music, some of it. But barring her being a great musician and all this stuff, she is a celebrity because a lot of people know her. They celebrate literally this image that she is, and she gets paid for that, paid in many, many ways. And that means she is not a normal person, period. She doesn't get to walk around. It's like that song, which of course I can't remember the band. You guys will help me. Common People.
Blur.
Like someone who's like, I want to be like common people. Yeah. She's not a common people.
Yeah.
So don't fucking like LARP like you're gonna go live like a common person. Well, you get on stage and are celebrated for being successful and whatnot. Sorry. That's the price, motherfucker. TMZ's on your ass. That's the price. Is it okay to do? No, but there is a fucking price.
Yeah.
So don't act like you're me and you live in a fucking garage. Go eat shit. All right? Like, that pisses me off. Like, an uber rich person or uber successful person be like, oh, it sucks. Oh, really? You know what sucks more? Not being that.
Yeah.
Or
there's definitely
make
ways
your
to
peace however you want.
There's ways to handle it, but I mean, I've been a dick to people walking up to me on the street. And
we're not a dick to people.
And like, or just in general, you know, and I'm not famous. So, you know, everybody has bad days. I think
you're infamous. You're more than famous. Infamous.
Infamous.
You're
exactly.
infamous.
Yeah, if this ever blows up and you want to approach me on the street, I mean, you know, just flip a
just
coin.
Fuck off. Dude, well, last time I was in town, I was driving with one of our very good buddies, Drizzle, and we're going down the way. We're going to meet up with Ken, and we see him walking, because Ken walks, okay? We roll down the window, and I'm in, like, my mom's car. It's like this Prius, okay? And I'm like, hey, motherfucker, right? Ken, on the road, is like, turns, sees us, and Drizzle's like, dude, go. I'm like, oh shit, fucking Ken. Fucking tore ass. Because he didn't recognize us, I think. He was like, what'd you say to me?
I mean, I do that with cars all the time when I take my walks. I mean, you gotta take your space on the road as a pedestrian. You can't. You gotta have a little toughness, or they're gonna run right over you.
I'm not dissing Chaperone for reacting like that. I can see myself acting that way.
Mm-hmm.
I am an irascible person. I could see myself being like, guys, fuck off. I could see that. And I could see myself even going online and being like, fucking mob. I could see it. That doesn't make it right.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't shit where you sleep.
Sure.
Right? These people, these fans, they're the reason she's where she is.
Yeah. But I'm gonna.
Also, we don't know the whole situation. You know, maybe
I was
the person
gonna
was
say,
pretty creepy. Maybe
like,
they're an asshole.
One of the things that I think is really important to like, and why I said the parasocial relationship aspect of this might take a second seat for me, a back seat for me, is just the notion that like technology and TMZ and all of these things are not old. Like the grand scope of the entirety of the Earth's history, humans aren't that old.
6,000 years, I know.
And exactly, you know, God and no, but
look at Ken, he's just frozen. It's just frozen.
But you know, so like I think that like even if you look at something 100 years ago at a studio system, there are still enough dark spaces to go metaphorically take your shit, like go poop in the corner and you're fine. Nobody's gonna have a TMZ camera up your ass for it. Nowadays, because there's Instagram and drones and photos all the fucking time, someone can hack your phone and know exactly where you are. I think the expectation and the conversation that we have to have is Chaperone is sleeping everywhere that we can see, and there's no place for her to shit. So like I'm extending this metaphor to death, but
and did they were they live streaming, or did they have their like phone on chaperone when they were walking up and, you know, recording that moment. I mean, I think that's kind of a dick move too. It's like if you're gonna walk up to somebody, you know, I would, you know, keep the camera in the pocket, just test the water a little bit. I mean, and certainly there are lines. I'm not going to walk up to somebody sitting at a table having dinner. I'm not going to
get your ass kicked.
Yeah,
at least in Kentucky. That fuck you up.
There is a time and place, and you have to kind of figure out where that is.
I'll contradict myself. It depends on the circumstance. What I'm really trying to say about celebrity is there's a give and a take. Yeah. And when you are a celebrity, or when you're rich, or when you're in the public eye, or whatever, there's a price for that. That's what I'm trying to say. And to act like a normal person when you're not, you know, I just saw like a YouTube or a short or something with it's an older clip of John Lennon's son, and who's a musician, whose name I don't know, somebody Lennon.
Julian.
And
Julian. His name is Julian.
Julian. And, you know, they could have named him some without a J and it helped. Anyway, Julian Lennon, right? And I haven't heard his music, but he's kind of complaining about how he's in his father's shadow. And I'm like,
well, yeah.
Bruh.
Yeah. But he also got lifted up. He got lifted way up.
If you weren't in your father's shadow, we wouldn't know who you are.
Exactly.
Yep. So it's like, I get it. I get the plight and I have sympathy for it. Kinda. But also, you know?
But that's Hollywood to a T. I mean, you even said it earlier, you know, how do you get a job? Well, it's nepotism. I mean, that's that's how you get a job. You know somebody. The end.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. I think that there's we're going to go into politics for just a hot second here.
I'm going to make coffee. You guys.
My personal belief is that there should be a, should I wait for him? I don't, he's leaving at the perfect.
No, you should go for it.
So, my personal belief is that we should have a mandatory government service for all people coming right out of high school. And the requirements are not military service necessarily, but government service in some way. So working as a firefighter, working as a police officer, working as an EMT, which healthcare should be universal.
That sounds like socialism.
Fuck yeah, let's fucking do it. Right. I love roads that are paid for by our taxes and firefighters who will come when my house is on fire. I
understand what you're saying for sure. I mean, they do that. But, they do that in Israel. Everybody joins the military, 100%.
And there's personally, I am very against like the military industrial complex aspect of it. Like, I think that aside from the fact that I think for Israel, it is a manipulation rather than a healthy thing, right? Because if you bring everybody, it's sort of like mobs. If you bring a random person into the room when you kill someone, and then you look at this random person and say, "Hey, now you're part of the mob," it's sort of impossible to then, or a very difficult thing to then go up and above that level and say, I'm going to fight the mob now and gonna have to like deal with the fact that I was also a part of the process of some of this stuff. It's, for me, a mandatory like government service. And specifically my hope is it would be that it's outside of your own city or outside of your own state, that you then, even if you are a uber wealthy person or the son or daughter or, you know, child of a famous person, and you go and work in Kentucky in a town that has 200 people in it, you're going to get such a different view of the world because nothing's going to be given to you.
Sure.
And I think that it would equalize and homogenize and help to like build a unity among people in the United States that currently is sorely lacking. You know, context is.
I mean, I think a year in civics. I mean, that should be like the last. Every 12th grader should at the very least need to volunteer for some kind of thing, if not volunteer, but I think that's an interesting concept. It certainly would give us an appreciation for how the world works.
Yeah,
for sure. But I think that's a hard pass in this political environment that we're in now, where they're dismantling the government and firing people. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a neat concept.
Yeah,
I like it.
I have a contradictory view of. I personally hate Donald Trump and everything that he stands for currently. However, if there was anything that was extremely necessary in our modern world right now, it is to dismantle the government in some form. I will give the caveat that I didn't want the Nazis to be the one to dismantle the government.
Sure.
Because the control that a group like the maggots will put onto the world is one that is dangerous and will only reaffirm the same kind of greed and manipulation of the system that we've seen for the past 50 plus years, maybe all of American history, but 50 years especially. But there is something about having a villain at the top to unify and to fight that is powerful for those who know how to use that. And so we are in an interesting time to say the least.
Sure. Well, I think that you say a lot when you say that stuff, and I think that a year in civics, if everybody had a little more civics or education, that we would all be in in a lot better place. And I think that it is willful destruction of the world economy. I think that is the goal. So
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I think that like interacting, I mean, it just comes down to more education and more power. You give someone the free will to be able to choose for themselves. And generally people will choose people. People will want a world where their community and the people that they interact with on a day-to-day basis is a positive one. And it's hard to interact with people if your only experience is the echo chamber, is the like one-on-one conversation with Jim, who you've all grew up with. He's the guy who does your mechanic stuff, and you both listen to the Joe Rogan Experience or to Fox News and And so your echo chamber ends up being those things that then get repeated to the same 4 people. So, again, education is power, and they're dismantling it currently to make it less comfortable for everyone involved. But not everybody's going to see that it's less comfortable for everyone involved.
Sure.
So,
well, I think that we're on the precipice. If things get bad enough for people, I mean, that people are going to react. I think a lot of people did react last weekend across the nation, and
Real quick recap: what happened
for last weekend?
Mm-hmm. If we're on the same page, go ahead.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, it's the hands-off protests that there were something like 1,150 different protests that happened around the country in every single state in the nation, and then a good number of them overseas, where millions and millions of people marched to show their displeasure of Elon Musk and Donald Trump's policies. And it's funny, I live right outside of downtown, and so at some point I like looked out the window, and were thousands
people.
There were thousands of Christians, which I generally in protests and stuff like that, you
see
a lot
of Halo, or what? How did you know?
They were floating. Floating with their little feet,
like in the Blues Brothers, like
it was like you could see people handing out water bottles, and they all just suddenly turned red, and then people were like, kind of loosey goosey, and they literally.
It just dawned on me what the hell you were talking about. I love that. That's great. Good.
There was it was, first off, it was mostly middle-aged to older
those people,
like especially at the beginning. It was a lot of
protest for sure,
and they were carrying banners with Jesus's face on it, and one guy was literally holding a cross with Jesus on it, like walking up the street. Say again?
Was that a counter protest?
No, it was for the hands off. And this is why I was baffled, because I like look outside, and again, it's like 2,000-3,000 Christians, older families that are walking up this hill holding crosses and singing hymns, and
coming for you, Drew.
And they were like, and it was for the protest. It was in support of it. And I was like, oh damn, this is where we're at, where it's not just like the fringes of society or whatever banding together. It's not just the like a religious groupings. It's actually a lot of
like white Jesus is coming at you,
and
straight up
regular ass families. Yeah, like it was. Also thought it was hilarious. It was the quietest protest beginning I've ever seen. Like there were groups singing and having conversation, but it was like you were at the end of a fair day, like a day at the fair. Yeah. And everybody's just exhausted and kind of like going home. So there's like a general like milling movement toward the cars. But no, they were just old and walking up a hill and concentrating.
That was not the case with Occupy Wall Street, but I feel like that's in there.
Oh Lord, I know. It's like the one time my generation decided to do something, and then just didn't. And the people were like, "So what are you here for? What are you shutting things down?" And they're like, "We don't know who's in charge. Actually, there's nobody who's in charge." And you have like the one interview where they're like, "Dude, we're just fucking hanging out, man."
Yeah.
Like, no!
Doing drugs, hanging out.
No,
Good job, guys.
Assholes. Actually, they're probably the ones that were walking up that hill. Yeah. Weird Canadian is on.
Yeah, I liked his comments. I think he was on point. I kind of showed him in the chat a little bit as he was.
Weird
riffing.
seeing as Trump is very Christian. Yeah, Trump. Look, any U.S. president says they're Christian. How many of them actually are, though?
Yeah.
Right?
It's.
Yeah, he says, "Fuck Elon and Trump," basically.
He was not a
and
fan.
we need to get rid of him.
I'm not a fan of Joe Rogan. Some people are.
He's apparently gone back on.
But it sounds like we discussed last week how he's kind of like, I guess his line is that deporting Americans without due process.
I know, but man, like I like Joe Rogan. I like it. I like watching his shit. At the same time, I guess it's more and more and more apparent to me that he's just a dude, and I don't think he's someone to follow. I think he's got some interesting conversations with some very interesting people sometimes, and the other times, just don't pay attention.
Well, I think
he's a celebrity, and he put Trump on there, and arguably,
I think if I saw him in public, I would go up to him and say something. That's a guy that I would not.
I don't know.
Come up with a
Yeah.
phone recording and being like,
Yeah,
"Hey,
I would
bro."
go with the phone. I would say things. I mean, I would keep my distance. I would not get too close because I don't want the
I wouldn't
Secret
get too
Service
close.
to destroy me. And it would
talking
be
about-
intimidating. I mean,
You talking about Trump?
the most.
You talking about Trump?
Yeah, I would.
Oh,
if he
yeah,
if he
fuck
was
that.
sitting at a dinner table, I would probably be like, "Dude, you fucked the country, man. What's
There's
up with
no
that?"
way. There's no way.
I don't know if you
I'll never
saw.
get close enough to get that close. You know, that's just.
No way.
I don't know if you saw the stuff online because Elon is kind of slowly getting ousted out of the Trump cabinet a little bit.
He's bad for business.
But there's this thing going around online where people are just, it's not brigading, but like they're going on and like full on spamming chats as Elon is playing video games, saying like, "You destroyed the country," and it like made him super uncomfortable and rage quit and stuff like that. And I think that like, kind of to what you were saying, Will, earlier, that like just context for those kind of people interactions is important. If you are actively affecting our lives on a daily basis with your ineptitude, then you absolutely have to be prepared to have a conversation on the street because you are going to be interacting with the people you're fucking with. So like,
yeah, and that's something that surely Joe Rogan knows is the moment you start segueing into politics and actual social change. I mean, there are people that vehemently disagree with you to the point of killing you.
yeah.
You know, Weird Canadian says the conservative
leader. Yeah.
Conservative leader is going to be on with Joe Rogan, and that's the reason people watch.
Yeah.
He does get good guests.
I don't know.
Like
anyway,
we do.
I really think that like specifically with Joe Rogan, he presents himself as a regular man, and I think that for a lot of especially rural, especially conservative folks, he kind of is a regular man.
He's extremely rich.
However, exactly, he's extremely rich. It is extremely profitable to be a right-wing grifter.
Fair. That's fair.
And I will again on the flip side.
He's lifting up viewpoints that are certainly not standard, and they're not healthy for the country. I mean, everybody can talk freedom of speech, but I think there's a responsibility for any broadcaster to, vet your person, and if they're going to, say things that put your audience in danger, you have to address it visually or push back against it by giving him free reign, which he's done on many occasions. It allows, look at the president.
Yeah.
I mean, my deal is this though, like, again, I'm gonna champion Joe Rogan a little bit just to push back.
Good.
Like during election times, he did offer Kamala Harris a spot. She didn't take it.
And that was probably a failure on her part. And
it was super huge. 100%. It looks like weakness is what it was.
And the way that she did it was a little bit of a failure too. I mean, it's just they thought they were safe, or they, I don't know what they thought, but
why is Bernie Sanders not on there? I would love.
He's been on there.
Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, he has been on there, and before Joe Rogan went dark side for all intents and purposes, he's a huge supporter of Bernie Sanders, and like there was a huge conversation among Democrats specifically, that's like, we need a Joe Rogan of the left. We need a Joe Rogan of the left. But Joe Rogan was on the left before the Democrats ousted Bernie Sanders as the candidate, and now it's, and I think that's the important part about like having a conversation about Joe Rogan, which is that social media, I said this when I was in high school helping out with the Obama campaign, that like whoever is the most memeable, presentable candidate on the internet is going to be the candidate that wins. And if you are boring, if you are not memeable, you are not going to win unless there is a huge upset or push in some way. And like that is, to me, has been very consistent. Like if you are looking at someone like Joe Rogan, he purposefully doesn't look up and research and vet because he wants to react in the way that a human would react, you know? Sure. And that makes him palatable. However, he, like you were saying, Ken, that like he does not take any time to be a person like who has compassion, who has understanding, and who just like he presents and platforms these people whose voices are constantly trying to focus their base onto topics and people and subjects that really don't fucking matter to them. Like trans people are less than 1% of the country, and yet it is some of the largest political conversations that we have on almost a daily basis. And how many trans people are going to be well, exactly. Again, like it's easy to right-wing grift. It's easy to present, it takes 10 years to build a building and only about 2 months to destroy it.
Well, the problem is that I think with trans in sports is what the right wing has grabbed onto.
And John Oliver just did an interesting show on that.
Yeah, he did. Actually. He did, and I've been following it because I work in sports medicine on the fringe, and so we've been addressing trans in sports, and how you weigh, because I think people should have the right to play sports. Anybody should be able to play on any team, but if you're early on and transitioning, it's just not going to be fair to, for a man to transition and play soccer who's gotten all of the puberty benefits of
well, I mean, if it were,
but also
then there wouldn't be separate.
Yeah, but
I'm gonna push back in just the sense that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
But it doesn't. A lot of trans athletes aren't winning all the awards at the same time. So I think there are sports where there's more of a gray area, and where I think anybody should be able to compete with anything, like intramural pool
like chess.
Or chess.
Chess. Yeah. What a weird thing that the chess organization has separated.
It's a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing. The issue is it actually similar to kind of like in Hollywood with people that look like me.
Mm-hmm.
Who's that? The idea is, well, the idea of in chess, it has traditionally been a male-centric thing. Mm-hmm. So if you're not a male, and it's going to be harder to get into. So they have a women's league, basically so that women can actually compete. Because the idea was you get all this huge pool.
I don't know. Sounds like DEI to me.
You know what I'm saying? Now, the kind of, as in women have their own league. You can be a WGM, a women's grandmaster, which is different than a GM, a grandmaster.
Yeah, it's a different.
And basically what it means is because they're awarded the title in the women's league versus in the universal league, the everybody league. So there is no men's league. There's chess. There's FIDE, which is Fédération Internationale, whatever. It's French for International Federation of Chess. And then you have the women's league. And then each country has their own little things that are generally a part of FIDE. But the deal is that, let's say you're a WGM and you go up against a GM, you're probably going to get destroyed.
Why? What?
Because
how
WGM,
do you know that?
How do I know it? Because it happens all the time. The idea is that if you have a smaller group of people, let's say you got 10 people, right? And they're playing chess, and you dig what I'm saying? So it's just being a GM means it was a harder climb, so you're going to be generally better. I'm not saying WGMs are always worse. It's just it wasn't as hard because there were fewer people.
Yeah.
They did this. It's like in Queen's Gambit. Like they did it because women were looked down on a lot, and to an extent still are. You know,
very much so.
So
yeah, actually,
that's why they have their own league. But at the same time, it almost kind of hurts, right? In a way.
Yeah, I think that legislating and making rules in that way often hurts the demographic that you're quote unquote trying to protect more than it does help. I'm not saying never legislate or make some sort of rules that help to articulate different scenarios, but I feel like those things should be reactionary, not preemptive, right? Like there needs to be a situation where 10 trans athletes end up winning gold medals to the point where like everyone is now looking for in the big conservative fear of like having all of these men put on dresses and then play soccer against a whole bunch of women. It's instead of preemptively doing that, which ends up hurting cis women, regular women, in 100 different ways that people could have predicted and constantly warn about. Instead, you wait for those moments to happen because, like, come on, like why are we worried about the trans athlete who wins 3rd place or 5th place or 8th place in all of these competitions, and then in the reverse way, like someone like Michael Phelps with his ungodly mutant arms and wins all sorts of awards for being a mutant, and yet like someone who has some sort of other advantage is restricted or regulated because what? I
think you make a fair point, but there is a little bit of a difference, right? So like we can go down that rabbit hole and then we have to question literally everything we do, which is maybe something that we should do. Why do we split up sports in the first place, right? And
well, I mean,
because where we're going, well, hold on. Yeah. Because where we're going with it is, we're questioning all of these decisions. Maybe we should question all those decisions and start from zero. Yeah. Of course, that has its own problems. My deal is, if we accept that there should be, let's pick a sport first of all. Let's talk about UFC.
Sure.
Okay? Something that's pretty obvious. In general, you shouldn't have men fighting women. Now, maybe you should have like a UFC where it's co-ed, and then anybody can fight, and the men will win.
Well, if you're talking about in the same weight, because they do it by weight, right? The different levels of weight, and
people will disagree with me. Obviously, I'm not saying there are no exceptions. I'm saying it's not fair. If I fight someone who has 10 pounds of body mass on me, I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose if I fight someone at all. But assuming that they're the same skill as me, that's huge. It's a huge advantage. And
if you,
if you know anything it's about right there.
Wrestling, the people who are super lightweight would beat up somebody who was heavier than them because they had a better muscle.
I'm just saying, in UFC, it's not all over the place, but it has been documented, specifically for women, that a trans athlete will hurt people. And
with that being said, it's not actually as
I'm not saying it's
close as you might. Well, and it's not as close as you might think. A lot of those things within like wrestling, boxing, UFC stuff. Again, it's if you have a natural biological advantage, let's say like having more testosterone in your body, and you end up being able to utilize that, then it should be allowed to some extent. Like, I don't think that like
right, but it's across the board, is what I'm saying. If you take the average guy,
it's not, especially after they start doing HRT and doing having certain hormone treatments, it really isn't.
Yeah,
I don't
does change. I don't know the science.
The playing field is changed, and I think there have been very few studies on any of this. Is one of the big, and it's such a small percentage of the population that it's the conversation is wrong from the base, because nobody can actually have a ground to have a conversation about it, because there are no studies, and you know, the Republicans are making this a social issue, so it's not fair to really even
let me push back on this, and this is my deal for John Oliver as well, which I do like John Oliver, and I liked his episode on the transports. There's a throughput that I keep on hearing, and it's a small part of the population, and it's not that big of a deal. They go to, he went to some interviews with trans specialists, and they were like, look, people don't transition to just get good at sports. That's ridiculous. Everybody's like, it's ridiculous. You lose so much when you transition. It's a huge change. And I was like, okay, look, I'm not discounting any of that, but I am saying when you are competing in sports, people do sacrifice that much. Like people that, and great, I'm talking about higher end, but people that are in NBA, people that are going to the Olympics, that's their life. It's literally all they do. So if someone's like, I want to be a thing, yes, they're going to sacrifice everything to get that thing. And, you know, one of the points was, it's high school, you know, it's not that big of a deal. What are you fucking talking about? You don't get into NBA just starting playing basketball when you're in college. You started when you were 4, and it was this passion. And yes, actually high school fucking matters big time. So it does matter. Now, is it one person? Is it 10 people? Is it 2 people in the entire state of wherever? At the same time, that I think there's some credence to the argument. If something isn't fair, it should be investigated. There should be science on it. We should actually think about it.
Well,
we shouldn't be bigots.
The argument
we
is unfair because it is strictly based in hate. It's not based in any kind of It's not based in any kind of theory or any kind of shit. They are.
And I will add again, like if you, especially in high school, even especially there, by the biological changes that we all go through between 9th grade and 12th is huge, and people who are bigger early on then might get more attention to build up their skills and build up their work until they get extra advantages that way. And again, there's so few trans people in the country, and then there are even fewer trans athletes. It's just sort of
it's fair.
It's a non-issue. It's an issue, but it's a non-issue. Statistically, it doesn't. You don't have.
And there's the feeling of there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of these people.
You don't have a basketball team that is all trans athletes dominating the sport, because that is not the case. You don't have a volleyball player trans athlete that's in the top 5, 10, or 100,
because they also have to be good, right? Like being a dude doesn't mean that you just win in the UFC.
And again, if they're doing some sort of hormone treatments or anything like that, and they're transitioning, then they're getting a completely new body to have to get used to. Like someone who was used to, I think about it like people who, like myself, I just turned 30 this past year, and I've started to notice a lot of my body. I know, I'm sorry, I apologize. I've started to notice a lot of my body like starting to really disintegrate. And
I haven't felt that yet. I'm just.
Well, you're a vampire, Will. So like, don't worry. Also, I have to comment, Ken, the fact that you've got the blue, and then Will, you've got the red in the background is hilarious during this conversation.
I am generally the villain in these conversations. I am.
But I just think that like when you're getting used to a new body and a new way of existing and all that, you're not just dealing with the skills and whatever that you might have learned as a child or growing up or getting private tutoring. You're also learning how to have a second puberty, a second moment of change. And so, like, again, for trans athletes who are especially younger trans athletes, they're dealing with the fact that they grew up as treated like a woman or treated like a man, right. And then they get completely different bodies, and sometimes it's stronger, sometimes it's weaker, sometimes the skills that they have are completely like gone because they're not able to go for as long because of lung capacity stuff, or I don't know. It's just like
we definitely need a lot more science and actual numbers. That's I will wholeheartedly admit.
Yeah.
Everything I'm saying is from an anecdotal perspective.
Sure.
I don't actually know.
Yeah.
It's just it's the kind of stuff that when I hear certain arguments, I think, well, wait a minute, what about this? Well, wait a minute, what about this? And perhaps I'm totally baseless. I'm willing to agree with that. One of my buddies, very good buddy of mine, who's trans, trans woman, mentioned, this was a couple of years ago, we're hanging out, and she was like, God, she was picking something up. She was like, God damn it, I've lost so much strength. And I was like, really? She was like, dude. She's like, I used to be able to just. And granted, is that because of the transition? Is it because she just got lazy? I don't know, but I've never really felt that way, right? Like I've never had truly been like, oh man, I can't do a thing. So there is surely something to it.
Yeah. I mean, again, a little bit of everything. Cultural contexts are also wild. The expectations for men is just figure it out. A lot of times the expectation for women is, no, we'll get a man to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I've seen like a variety of different videos where it's like, me when my boyfriend's not there, and it's some woman who's like, figuring out how to get heavy items through doors over to XYZ place, cleaning, doing, fucking working it. Yeah. And then the cut is when my boyfriend is there or something like that. And they're like, it's too heavy. Can you? Right. And so again, the cultural expectation of that being the case means that like, we have the pressure for women to be demure and subservient in some way, versus like men and masked folks who just get the brunt of like, pick it up, figure it out.
I'm gonna lose in a tennis match to a high school female tennis player that's on a team.
Tennis is fucking.
Yeah.
I mean, I was pretty good at tennis 20 years ago. Maybe then I could have competed a little bit, but I just get my butt kicked, just like swimming. The conservative woman, I can't remember her name, but she was a swimmer. Oh yeah, at CPAC or whatever. She went to the school just down the street from me, so I was like, okay, this is great. And I feel like kind of doubled and tripled down, and Trump said basically, oh, I could beat you in a swimming race, and there's no way that she would win at swimming. I think the last time that was disproven was with the tennis player
Serena Williams.
Well, I can't remember her name, in the 80s, where this guy challenged all these different tennis players, and then finally lost to this one female tennis player.
Well, being a man doesn't mean that you automatically win. Yeah. But I think that the argument is, if you're competing in sports, then you're trying to go to the highest level, right? You're trying to win You're trying to be the best. You're trying to build the same, the best team or be the best person, the best skills, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the gradient isn't fair. So it's one thing if I try to play a high school or a middle school girl who's a tennis player.
Sure.
She's a tennis player. Yeah, of course she's going to win. She plays tennis. I don't.
With that being said, like I do, again, like I think that it's sort of to the boxing UFC stuff. It needs to be based off of your skill level and weight class and the things that are important to that particular sport. Because like there are, I think one of the arguments that I feel like I had a hard time for a long time figuring out was the idea of biology, of the notion that like men have bigger lung capacity and so more ability to grow muscles in a way that helps them to run farther, pick up larger objects.
I just think that this whole conversation that we're having is it doesn't matter because you're giving credibility to an argument that is a false.
Now, shutting down, I disagree with you wholeheartedly. No, I think this is something that's on people's minds. Should be talked about.
I'm not shutting it down just to shut it down. I'm shutting it down because the argument is. There's no fact. They have no fact to say trans people shouldn't be in this. That isn't, and a lot of the trans people that they say are trans in these arguments are women. They're not trans at all. So
that's fair. That's fair. I can understand that.
It's like if you lie to me one time in an argument. That argument becomes invalid. You cannot base.
Okay, but now we're gonna switch gears a little bit. Since we'll go straight into politics.
That means that you need to figure out a ground before you can argue about it.
I agree with you there. However, one of the problems I think in these kinds of conversations is when people say, "Okay, well, we need to stop talking about it," like. You don't shut down conversations. That's ridiculous.
Okay, so I agree with what Ken is saying in the notion that like if we are sitting there and arguing over, what an actor has done in a movie but we have absolutely no knowledge of anything to do with this actor. It's just we saw them in a movie and we're having an argument over what they have done in the past. Then it's just going to go back and forth around the subject with absolutely no conclusion because it's all opinions based, all culture war, all like, and so like what I think Ken you're saying is like, we have for my metaphor, for my whatever, we have the idiot box to look it up, which means we can create a foundation of knowledge and then grow from there. Whereas in the case of like trans athletes, the foundation for most things to do with trans folks have been constantly censored, constantly destroyed, constantly attacked and hunted after. And so when we start trying to argue over these subjects, it becomes impossible to actually find a solution or find a conversation point beyond, well, my opinion is trans people just shouldn't be allowed because, of course, and versus, well, no, what the fuck are you talking about? We don't have enough information yet. We need more.
It's basically a straw man argument, like is what you're trying to argue against. But I think what Bill is saying, and this is something I agree with what he's saying, is that we tend to, both people who are on any side of an argument, we tend to, just shut someone down and cut off the conversation when we run out of argument ability. And I think that is that's a different conversation. I don't think we're shutting Bill down in this conversation. I'm saying that is the argument. That is the argument. We cannot have the conversation because we don't have any agreement on info. We got to pick
again. There's some anecdotal thing. I think benefit of this conversation. We should move on. Yeah. But I think the benefit for myself is the realization that we, like you said, we don't have the numbers, we don't have the statistics, so we can't really viably have an opinion on what should happen. What we can definitely debate on is the way in which it should. So, and the benefits of going in certain routes, because we can apply it to other things. And we have the stuff that we do know about sports in our own experience. For example, if I punch a woman, in general, it's going to hurt her really, really bad. And if she punches me, it might. Now, people can look at that and be like, oh my God, you're a blah, blah. Do it, and you're going to see what's up.
Well, I mean, and then the group of guys that are standing behind her, I think it might hurt you too. Or if she's
I think you're proving in a very oxymoronic, obvious way exactly what I'm saying.
If she's standing with two other women, you would probably get hurt as well, or one other woman.
Probably not, unless they know how to fight.
I mean, I don't know.
I think we're just reskinning. We're reskinning the same goat here. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. We're off
the weird Canadian. The weird Canadian says, "What about trying to inspire?" I asked, to inspire what, and they said, "Inspire others that it's possible to break the gender barrier."
Mm-hmm. And I think that conversation ends up being more to the extent of like how we get educated and how we get push ideas and education pushed forward. I read this great book. Actually, it might be up on my shelf right now. Let's see if I can spot it.
Shelves.
I know we don't believe in reading here. What is this
here? Tell me it's Joe Rogan. Tell me what to believe.
So there's a great psychology book about the idea that we have never really studied women's bodies, and we really have never had a medical breakthrough in women's bodies without psychology without there being some sort of pressure to grow in men, right? So in this book, the perfect example it had was before World War I, women were treated for hysteria and and it was treated as some sort of malady that, whatever, it's just women being women.
Melancholy is what it was called.
And it was a wide variety of different symptoms and situations. And this included folks who had been assaulted in some way. And it included people who were not masturbating enough. And it included, like a wide range.
You got to keep that stuff clean, man. You got to just get it out.
Exactly.
You want a prostate? You got to use it or lose it, baby.
And that right there is the butt of the joke. So
there's a pun somewhere. Come on.
We'll get to the bottom of it for sure. So in this particular book, it talks about the fact that like men went to World War I, came back with what they called shell shock, and we started researching shell shock and trying to figure out what the hell was going on. Figured out it was something called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
And there were a certain number of doctors who looked at the symptoms of these men who had gone to war and come back and said, "Oh shit, what the hell? This looks like the women who have been assaulted, that they're experiencing the same thing." And then suddenly there's a subdivision, and suddenly women's health jumps forward 10, 15, 20 years.
Right.
But it didn't happen until we started looking at men. And that has been like the consistent follow through.
Women also haven't been representative in the medical field either, and doctors until even recently. I've seen it certainly, and I work for a female surgeon. Her group has expanded exponentially, but in the 80s there were like six other people in her field. You know, she was at the forefront and has created studies for female injury specific, but before her, nobody did. There was not a thing. This is the 90s. This is the 80s, 90s. Yeah. Today, this is new, studying male and female anatomy, and it's amazing how much we haven't even begun to. And men and women are fundamentally different in the way we're built in a lot of different ways, and so the female athlete is different than the male athlete.
That's 100% true, and not to dive us back into the conversation. No, it's 100% true. You're right. They're very different, which is why we split them.
But that is something that needs to be studied.
It needs to be studied. It needs to. And Drew, you mentioned something that's straight there. Why nowadays, right? We're not talking about 1920. Nowadays, why is it that discrepancy is still there?
Well,
like, why is it that when a woman goes to the doctor, they're like, you should be in pain. That's normal.
Yeah. Yeah, because women's pain tolerance is exponentially larger than men's. And it really is. It just has to do with the fact that, like, not enough time has passed for humans. We are, as you were just saying, Ken, like, the people who are, we're just now losing the final bit of folks who were fighting in World War II, right? Which means that the people who are growing up, 1960s, the little girl who was part of the, oh God, I'm losing all my details, but the little girl who was one of the first people to be integrated into a white school system in Alabama, you got those famous photos. Yeah. She's a 60-year-old woman. She has an Instagram right now. She's like actively an adult and has a voice and talks to people. It's like this stuff that was happening was not that far away. Like, our history is short, and we like to think in the moment, and we like to think in the last only like 5 to 10 years that somehow things are different. But we're seeing the ripple effects of what has been coming down the line since the 1920s, since the 1930s, since the 1940s. Like, these are, I feel like I've seen on sort of a micro scale, people go to school, they learn math, they learn history, they learn science, and they have like one level of understanding when they get there. Then they move forward, they learn other math, they learn other science, they learn other history, they get a different understanding. Then they graduate and they say, fuck math, fuck science. Yeah. And so they lose some of that. But then everybody else around them starts picking up the pieces and filling in the gaps for them. And so as an adult, you suddenly are like, oh, there's a new context for when I was in 4th grade and learning how to do math, because now I'm putting it into a practical application. I'm learning in reality with society, with friends who are nerdy about, weird science stuff or love a specific part of history. We start growing and changing, and we get a new understanding as we reapproach subjects. It's one of the reasons why, as a kid, I was like, I never want to rewatch a movie. I never want to rewatch a TV show ever again, because once I've seen it, I got it all in my head. There's no more details that I'm going to pull out of this. But as an adult, as I've learned that, like, no, you can watch one movie for your entire life, and every single time get something slightly different, a new detail, a new way of saying this or understanding a person. And on a macro scale, on a human society scale, that stuff moves slower. So like a person who grew up with Jim Crow era ideologies in a Jim Crow state, and then gets to be an adult and has kids themselves, but maybe they're in a different state or a different school system or whatever, is going to have a different understanding of how to interact with people than someone who grew up after segregation, who grew up with technology, who grew up, you know, it takes time for the push and pull of generations of society to grow in the proper ways. And so like I've seen people on Instagram talk about how this rise in fascism around the world, not just in the United States, is this sort of like death knell pendulum swing of patriarchal ideology, of the idea that men and man society is the way to exist. Because in the 1860s, when women are fighting for suffrage, for the first time, you know, it like rippled through parents and kids who grew up in that era to the 1940s, where they are then parents and teaching their kids to do stuff. And then those kids grow up to have kids. And now the modern day adults are the ones who are like, you know, it's like only 2 generations prior and you're getting slavery. So like it takes in some cases 1 generation. Like it takes a while for this stuff to settle and to ripple into consciousness. So
it's crazy to me. In the 80s, I remember thinking as a kid, we'll have all this stuff figured out. I mean, everything in the early 80s, late 70s was kind of geared toward, you know, a brighter future, you know, that we were going to figure all, especially the social issues, like we would have moved beyond some of the hate that we experience in our society.
To some extent we have. But to some extent we have.
In a lot of ways we haven't, and surprisingly not so.
But I mean, okay. You know, the glass is half full, the glass is half empty. I'm saying that there is progress. I'm not saying it's enough. I'm saying that there is fucking progress.
Yeah, I
actually guarantee you there is progress.
I'm blown away by it. Seems like to me it's a lack of progress. Like I think we
because you're a pessimist.
Had expected so much more, and I certainly expected to you know, have intelligent conversations with people instead of get blindsided by nonsense.
Yeah. It was a joke in Demolition Man that, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger was going to be the president of the United States.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
but it's also I mean, why do you think Idiocracy was such an important film? Like,
the only thing they didn't get right were cell phones.
Yeah.
Everything else was pretty close.
But we got Crocs.
We got Crocs, dude.
I love that. I love that story. Do you want to tell the
you don't
history
want me to
of
tell
that?
any stories.
Really quick, just to hit the chat. Weird Canadian says the last 40 years were more growth of understanding than the last 2,000. And Sir Long Short says, totally, in reply to the Weird Canadian. Yeah, tell us the story. And bring all this back.
Tell us the story about the Crocs or about the... Oh, well,
whatever you guys are talking about.
They were introduced and I don't know much about the
story.
Were
they really?
I think they were introduced
actually,
in Idiocracy.
I have the story then.
You tell the story.
So basically the story, the rumor, the whatever that I have heard is essentially in the creation of Idiocracy, they were like, we need a really fucking stupid set of like shoes that everyone fucking wears in the future. And so they were searching around and they found this like tiny little company that was like, yeah, sure, we'll donate our shoes to the cause. And so everybody in that movie is wearing these shoes, and it turns out that company was Crocs. And so in a hilarious twist of fate, the shoe that the directors and the producers were like, nobody is gonna fucking wear this. This is the dumbest looking shoe in the universe, and only idiot future it would be the signal for it. It turns out that they're a comfortable shoe and that they are a very successful company. And
throw those things back.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Speed mode. Fucking yeah. So yeah, and who knows if that's one of the many innovations in the last 40 years that we should really be proud of that beat out the Renaissance. But
so in talking about, like, I mean, I think these the spirit of what we're talking about has a lot to do with Hollywood right now. I think you can see the sort of slow moving, the monolithic iceberg movements of culture. There's like a bug in here. I'm gonna kung fu it. And
I think you got it, Ken.
Yeah, thank you. And you also see it in Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, there's a lot of craziness. Crazy talk going on with the new D&D. Also mixed with essentially corporate. I'm gonna get you. Corporate shit. So, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, always. I would actually be really interested to know, because I found D&D pretty like in later in my life of like 2017, 2018, 2019 era.
Sure.
But so I would definitely be curious to know like how D&D for folks who played before and after pandemic, before and after, this shift towards queer openness and all that, and specifically because for my experience of playing D&D and the people who play D&D at this current moment is that they tend to be able to be more accepting among fringe groups and among quote unquote alternative ways of thinking, and that like the flexibility that D&D has of just tell a story that you want to tell allows for people to just express themselves in ways that they may not normally be able to express themselves. It's microcosms. Yeah. And microcosms of filmmaking, of storytelling, of becoming an author, of, like it's one of the more, you have that whole saying of like, history is stranger than fiction. And to some extent, you are sort of creating that in real time because you are interacting with a whole bunch of people or a small group of people in a story. And so I don't think I've ever, I mean, maybe it's just because those stories are boring, but I don't think I've ever heard someone retell a D&D story that was like, I expected them to go from point A to point B to point C, and then they did. It's always the story of they went from point A to point B, then they went back to point A for some fucking reason, and then they got sidetracked chasing a cat for a while, and then the cat, I had to figure out as a DM to like make this cat an important part of the story. So now instead of C over here, we're actually over at Y because I had to scramble. And
what's interesting is if you just look at the hero's journey, it does that. I mean, think of the journey for Odysseus, right? So point A.
Odysseus is a D&D campaign?
Oh, yeah. So he's in Ithaca. That's point A. He's going to the Trojan War. Point B. He comes back to Ithaca. Turns out the interesting part of the story is the journey. So, whereas you get into this module thinking where it's like, oh, well, let's just get to the boss. Let's kill the boss. Let's get the XP. Something that I found in role-playing games in general, we actually, I mentioned D&D just because it's general. We actually try to not talk so much about D&D because Hasbro gets enough love. Gaming in general, tabletop role-playing games in general, like Dreadlore, for example, or the Linen Tapestry.
Or any other indie game.
Or any other indie RPG. One of the things that I find really interesting about kind of I don't want to overuse the word zeitgeist, the mindset of today and the conversations that I see is a conservatism and an attempt at change. And I see there's this push and pull specifically in that arena. One of the big deals with the new D&D was there was a graphic of a character with a wheelchair, and people got up in arms about this because they were like, okay, first of all, if there's magic, what? There's literally magical resurrections. Why would you? What?
Yeah,
that doesn't. And contextually,
well, they addressed
I agree.
that in Doctor Strange. He had to make a choice.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point, though.
But the reason they did it is because Hasbro is trying to make money.
Yeah, of course.
And which is not a bad thing.
And they're
trying to be inclusive of the actual players who might want to have a character who's in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
So the question really is, why is there a push and a pull there among the fan base? And I think of the conservatism where people are like, I don't want things to change. What's the mindset of that? The mindset of that is there's a fear of stop taking things away. Stop changing things. Is it really about the issue of the wheelchair? Maybe some people are just bigots, or just assholes. But I think maybe there's this feeling in gaming right now. Like you said, Drew, I was going to cons back in like 2008, 2009, and what I saw in these demographics, these groups that go into cons, they cosplay, they're seriously into gaming. You have subcultures, lots and lots of talk about like pansexuality, BDSM, kink, all over, trans, etc. And this is at a time, 2008 and 2009, when these are definitely subcultures, right? Divergent feeling subcultures.
Yeah.
And yet it's all over. And these are the same people that have problems with the new versions of Dungeons and Dragons that are like, there's no racial bonuses. And then you have me, and it's like, I'm talking about mechanics. Like, so I think there's this feeling of like people picking apart things, changing them unnecessarily, seemingly, and like tearing down what they think is the actual game.
Yeah,
with stories in Hollywood.
I think that it's the push and pull that I think you're talking about isn't so much about the nitpicky specifics of what they're frustrated about, and honestly, even it's not even about necessarily like a fear of change or something like that, but more like a speed at which things change. Some people are more willing to allow for change to happen quickly, and some people are not as ready to follow through with change as quickly, so need more time to come to terms with those things and need different ways of communicating to those kinds of things. And for me, I love this term. It's the Overton window. This idea that society has a left and a right of acceptability, and everything within this, everybody's personal individual opinions are scatter charted all throughout this. And some people have more controversial opinions, some people have less, some people have and
outside of that, and you can't accept it.
And depending on the conversation subject, the Overton window either shifts one way or another. And so, like this is why in 2008 we're having conversations about whether or not gay people should be allowed to kiss on the street, whereas in 2025 we're having conversations about whether or not trans people should exist. The expectation in 2008 was, of course, trans people shouldn't exist, and of course they don't. Right. And even if there's centuries of history around it, but the Overton window, Say again.
We like to say that didn't exist.
Right. Right. Well, and so, it's hard for people to come to terms when there is a lack of education, a lack of diversity of thought, of interaction. I mean, it's the reason why cities often are more liberal thinking, quote unquote, more blue, more left leaning than rural areas, right? You grow with a certain kind of ideology, your expectation, your desire, your need for a slower pace of life is to have interactions happen at a pace that you can understand. And if things change quickly, then your muscles aren't used to that. You're thinking about it and you're moving in a slower pace, and then someone's trying to rush you,
And we resist change.
And more specifically, like, I can't go and become a marathon runner right now. I have to work up to it. And if everyone around me is marathon runners and they're going for fucking miles beyond where I can run, I feel left behind. I feel frustrated.
We literally are left.
and that's I think for me the exact thing, which is that people in the city oftentimes get exposed to 100,000 different ideas, but good, bad, ugly, whatever. And so they're used to having to think differently, having to think farther, having to think closer, finding a community within yourself and not judging another community for existing the way they want. And so they're used to change.
Well, you have to tolerate in I mean, in LA, I think Ken warned me about this many times. You're gonna find everything, and so you have to tolerate it or else you go insane.
Yeah.
Like when I get on the road and I'm like, God, every kind of driver exists out here.
Yeah. And from every
tolerate it.
Every culture and go ahead.
I was just going to say our communities are getting smaller as a rule in general. I mean, Facebook communities are getting smaller, they're more niche, specialized. Discord communities are very niche and stylized. I know. We have the most ability to communicate with our neighbors, but we're not saying anything to them. We're, in fact, arguing with them about details and just the slightest things. Finding a way to open up a communication with people that you disagree with is so vitally important, and it's something I think we should do on the show a little bit. Unfortunately, I tend to agree with the guests.
You agree with the guests, and I disagree with everything you say. It's great. It's great.
But I mean, we've had guests on that I
we like the second
with.
hand and the minute hand.
But
we line up every so often.
It's we're at a stage where people we're gonna find people who are just wrong, and they're never gonna be right until you have a conversation about your favorite song and it just happens to be the same one. Or
what's the clapback? What's her name? Sheridan? No, what's Charlotte Lamar? What was her name?
Good Charlotte. Is that it?
No, not Good Charlotte. The woman who with the hair who yelled at her face.
Oh, Chapel Roan.
Chapel Roan. Yeah, I
close.
I don't even.
Hedley Lamar.
Hedley Lamar. All right, Ken. I think we probably need to wrap it up pretty soon.
I think it's time.
You got anything else to say, Ken?
Dinner's waiting for me. I'm hungry.
All right. Drew, we give the guest the last words. So, anecdote, joke, anything you wanted to plug, anything you wanted to say, leave us with, etc.
Yeah. I guess I'll just reiterate the stuff that was already said, which is that like individuals are always trying to go for good things and for what helps the most people. And so, take a moment to go and just say, thank you, I love you to the people around you, and to be patient with people who disagree with you, because at the end of the day, we're just trying to find common ground. And yeah, other than that, I don't know. I'll see everybody on the big screen at some point.
Yeah, do it. I look forward. Please stay in tune with your next projects. Anything that you're promoting in the future. This has been the Geeky Gamer Podcast with Ken and Bill, and please join us on our Patreon. Every little bit helps if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, don't even try. Just don't do it. We don't want your money. If you can't afford to be on our Patreon, don't give us any money. I would rather you eat and you be able to do the things.
But if you want some art, maybe some songs, some BTS, you just let us know.
Any number of things. All lowercase letters. Mr. Interrupt brought us the noise art. Couchfire Media makes the
good.
Total Replay Production fucked off a couple of years ago.
Yeah, they're gone. Pretty sure. I don't think they're coming back.
Thank you, Andrew, for being on our show. I hope you come back and play some role-playing games with us.
Yeah, I'd love to. And thank you both.